Chapter 1. Mysterious Sky Sect Sword Training Peak. On the spacious mountain, dozens of white-clothed youths were practicing their swords. Dazzling spirit energy wrapped around their swords as they cut through the air and vibrated in the air. Not far away, a group of linen-clothed youths watched in a daze, their eyes filled with envy. If only I could become one of them. That way, I could also learn the sword. Just thinking about it makes me excited. A linen-clothed youth said, "Dream on. They are disciples of the mysterious Sky Sect, and we are sword slaves. How could we practice the sword like them?" If you want to become a disciple of the mysterious Sky Sect, it's simple. Just learn from Lin Xian. A sarcastic voice sounded. The linen-clothed youths laughed together, but their gazes were all looking in the same direction. In the forest, there was a linen-clothed youth around 16 or 17 years old. He had a delicate face and a thin body. He held a black iron sword and constantly stabbed out. Sweat had long since soaked his clothes, but he was completely unaware. Lin Xian? Humph! A trash like him. Even if you give him 100 years, he won't be able to become a disciple of the mysterious Sky Sect. Not to mention anything else, among us, he is at the bottom. What can he use to become a disciple of the mysterious sword sect? That's right, I heard that a few days ago he wanted to break through to the pulse condensation stage, but failed. He vomited blood, and his cultivation dropped to the 3rd level of the body refinement stage. He still hasn't recovered. This voice was filled with schadenfreude. It's him. He's been practicing the same sword technique every day for the past 3 months. Moreover, it's the ordinary kind. I think he's gone crazy from practicing. Many people's voices were very loud. When Lin Xian heard these words, a trace of bitterness surfaced in his heart. However, the hand holding the sword tightened. He tensed up his face and continued to practice the sword. On the path of martial arts, body refinement was the foundation, and the pulse condensation stage was the beginning. Only by opening up the spiritual veins in the body would one have the chance to walk further on the path of martial arts. Brother Wang is already at the 9th stage of the body refinement stage. If you break through to the pulse condensation stage, don't forget about us. When these linen-clothed youths saw that Lin Xian was unmoved, they all cursed in their hearts, and then began to curry favor with a youth beside them. That's for sure. Brother Wang will be able to make a breakthrough in 2 months. By then, he might even become a disciple of the Black Heaven sect. Wang Yang glanced at Lin Xian with disdain and said, "I don't need 2 months. I'll be able to break through in a month at most." Really? Brother Wang is mighty. The linen-clothed youths around him began to flatter him. "Brother Wang, look at how arrogant Lin Xian is. Why don't you teach him a lesson?" Wang Yang had long been dissatisfied with Lin Xian. He glanced at the white-clothed disciples practicing their swordsmanship. Estimating that there was still some time before the break, he stood up and walked towards Lin Xian. The other linen-clothed youths followed, ready to see Lin Xian make a fool of himself. Lin Xian was fully focused on practicing his swordsmanship. He rushed forward and thrust his sword forward. With a flash of sword light, a sword mark was left on the tree trunk. What they didn't know was that Lin Xian had been practicing this move for 3 years. From that day onwards, he had been practicing this swordsmanship every day. No matter what the situation was, he had never stopped. Swoosh! A stone flew towards the back of Lin Xian's head. The sound of it piercing through the air rang out. The force behind the stone was frightening. Lin Xian tilted his body to the side and narrowly avoided the attack. He stopped moving and looked over angrily. He saw Wang Yang and a group of linen-clothed youths standing not far away. They looked as though they were looking for trouble. "Yo, your movement technique isn't bad. You can even dodge that." Wang Yang said with a smile. "What do you want?" Lin Xian gripped the sword in his hand and said in a low voice. If he had been a little slower, There would have been a bloody hole in his head. He had no enmity with these people, but they were so vicious. I heard that you've been practicing the swordsmanship for 3 months. It must be very powerful. Show it to us. Lin Xian looked at them coldly and didn't say a word. Why, you don't dare? Or are you saying that you've been practicing for 3 months and there's no effect at all? Wang Yang laughed arrogantly. Brother Wang, show him what you're capable of. Let him know how powerful you are. Kid, let me show you what a swordsmanship is. Wang Yang took a step forward, and a fierce aura gushed out from his body. It was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. As expected of a 9th rank body refinement realm cultivator, just his aura alone is enough to make me uncomfortable. Many linen-clothed youths were shocked. Wang Yang sneered. He pulled out his steel sword and brandished it before thrusting it towards Lin Xian. The linen-clothed youths widened their eyes. They wanted to see Lin Xian's powerless appearance as he fell to the ground. They were already sick of this guy who didn't fit in. They were all sword slaves, so why did he act like a master? Lin Xian sighed. His pale hand gripped the black sword. In the next moment, his eyes became abnormally fierce. He pulled out the sword, leapt up, thrust the sword, and sheathed the sword. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. When the crowd came back to their senses, they found that Lin Xian had already sheathed the black iron sword and was standing there coldly. Impossible. This is impossible. Wang Yang looked back in horror. A strand of his hair was cut off, and there was a bloody wound on his neck. Blood was flowing out. Hiss! The crowd sucked in a breath of cold air. They never would have thought that Wang Yang, a 9th rank body refinement realm cultivator, would actually be defeated by Lin Xian, a 3rd rank body refinement realm cultivator. Moreover, it was a victory in one move. Who exactly is this Lin Xian? What kind of swordsmanship does he practice? This was the question on everyone's mind. What's going on? Why are you all gathered here? Do you want to rebel? A fierce voice sounded. Oh, no. The Black Sky sect's disciples are going to rest. The linen-clothed youths trembled. They all put on a smile on their faces and welcomed the white-clothed disciples. Master, you must be thirsty. This is 9-night spirit tea. I brewed it overnight. Young master, secret spirit pill. It can quickly recover your physical strength. Take one. All of the linen-clothed youths bowed and took care of the white-clothed disciples. Even Wang Yang was no exception. He put away his frightened expression and quickly ran towards a white-clothed disciple. Master, your pill, Wang Yang respectfully said. The youth took the pill and swallowed it. His eyes glanced at Wang Yang's neck, and his brows furrowed. What's going on? How did you get the wound on your neck? The white-clothed youth Chin Feng asked. Master, Wang Yang's body trembled. If his master knew that he lost to a 3rd rank body refinement realm cultivator, his ending would be very miserable. At this moment, the other white-clothed disciples also came over. Some of the sword slaves explained what happened. Everyone looked at Lin Xian. A sword slave dares to be so bold. Do you believe that this young master will kill you? Looks like you guys are becoming more and more unruly. Young master, he is Miss Tang Yu's sword slave. Someone reminded. Oh, Tang Yu changed to a sword slave? How come I didn't know? What? Do you have a problem with that? Outside the crowd, a clear voice sounded. Following that, a young girl wearing a pale, white skin-tight dress walked in. This young girl's facial features were exquisite. Her skin was white, her figure was impressive, and her legs were long and slender. Many people secretly swallowed their saliva. Even the white-clothed disciples' lips were dry, and their eyes were shining. Lin Xian, let's go. Tang Yu ignored these people and threw the sword in her hand to Lin Xian. Then she left with him. Are we going to let them go just like that? Some disciples were unconvinced Don't worry, I can't touch Tang Yu, but a little sword slave, I can play him to death. Tomorrow, we will enter the mountain to prepare for that matter. Bring this kid along, and let him have a good experience. You dare to provoke me, Chenfeng? You're dead. The white-clothed disciple looked at Lin Xian's back and revealed a cruel smile. Lin Xian followed the long-legged beauty and attracted the attention of many people. Of course, most of these gazes were directed at Tang Yu. Tang, you didn't care about these gazes at all. She looked at Lin Xian with a smile and said, I saved you. How do you plan to repay me? Yes, thank you. Lin Xian said seriously. The young girl clenched her teeth. Her small face was full of anger. She stared at Lin Xian with an unkind expression. Then, as if she thought of something, she blinked her eyes and said softly, Lin Xian, there's something wrong with my sword. Help me take a look. The young girl handed over a long sword. The dark green scabbard was made from the skin of a demon beast. There were a few gems on the scabbard that sparkled under the sunlight. Lin Xian didn't care about this at all. He grabbed the long sword, pulled it out, and carefully examined it. The aqua blue blade was like the sky, but there was a small black spot at the tip of the sword, which made the entire sword dim a lot. AI, you don't care about your sword at all. Lin Xian muttered as he used the sword to cut his finger and let the blood flow out. His finger was stained with blood, and very quickly, the black spot disappeared. Lin Xian let the blood flow over the entire blade before he stopped. It's done. He handed the long sword to the young girl. The young girl happily took the long sword and waved it in the air a few times. It made a whooshing sound as the blood was absorbed into the sword. The entire sword was like a sapphire. Stand there. The young girl coldly shouted when she saw Lin Xian turn around and leave. Tang Yu, your sword has been fixed for you. What else do you want? Lin Xian sighed and said helplessly, I want to practice my sword. Spar with me. Tang Yu angrily pulled out the long sword. Big sister, you are a 4th level meridian spiritual knight. You want me, a 3rd level refining body spirit apostle, to spar with you? Are you trying to kill me? Lin Xian immediately refused. Disciples who have reached the meridian stage are called spiritual knights, and those who have reached the refining body stage are called spirit apostles. Don't worry, I won't use my spiritual power. Tang Yu's mouth curved into a smile. With a twist of her wrist, the blue long sword suddenly pierced over. This girl is playing for real. Lin Xian was shocked and hurriedly raised his sword to block. With a ding sound, the two swords clashed. Lin Xian only felt a strong force that pushed him back 3 steps. I didn't use any spiritual power. Tang Yu giggled as she said. The long sword in her hand changed again, and like a gust of wind, it attacked Lin Xian. Hee, this is my new clear wind sword technique. Try it. The long sword in Tang Yu's hand created a gust of wind that blew Lin Xian's clothes. Damn, it's like this again. Every time you learn a new sword technique, you use me to practice. Lin Xian had already been a sword slave in the Black Heaven sect for 3 months. In these 3 months, he didn't know how many times he was tortured by this little devil. Every time he practiced with her, he would definitely be injured. Thinking of this, he heard a rip sound, and a long cut appeared on his clothes. Lin Xian was furious, and the long sword in his hand began to counterattack. Although he was unable to unlock his spirit meridians and was unable to truly cultivate, Lin Xian was very talented when it came to swordsmanship. Those ordinary swordsmanship became magical in his hands, as if he was born with this ability. This was also the reason why Tang Yu often looked for him to practice swordsmanship. Seeing that Tang Yu didn't use any spiritual power, Lin Xian swung his long sword and drew half an arc in the air, deflecting Tang Yu's attack to the side. Then he directly chopped down towards Tang Yu's wrist. Tang Yu was shocked. She danced with the breeze sword technique in an attempt to neutralize this attack. However, Lin Xian's sword was like a poisonous snake, closing in on her step by step. Every time, he accurately blocked her moves. Humph! Tang Yu was furious and unconsciously used her spiritual power. The blue long sword emitted a ball of light and sent Lin Xian flying. Plop! Lin Xian flew back 2 meters and fell to the ground. The blood in his chest was in turmoil. In front of spiritual power, he was like a small boat in a raging sea that could capsize at any time. If I could open my spiritual pulse, I wouldn't have fallen to this point. Lin Xian thought of this, and his expression darkened. God, you gave me such a good aptitude, but I can't open my spiritual pulse. You're playing me to death. Seeing Lin Xian playing dead on the ground, Tang Yu walked over and kicked him. All right, stop playing dead. I didn't use any strength. Lin Xian winced in pain and sat up. Give me a spirit pill to heal. Otherwise, no one will practice with you in the future. Tang Yu rolled her eyes at him and reluctantly took out a scarlet pill and threw it over. Other sword slaves would bow and scrape and listen to their masters. However, this Lin Xian was different. He ignored her and put on airs. However, Lin Xian had a unique understanding of swordsmanship. He nurtured his sword better than other sword slaves, so Tang Yu only bullied him a little. She didn't dare to break him. Ever since she started practicing with Lin Xian, her swordsmanship had improved a lot in the past 3 months. You can be considered a sword genius. It's a pity you can't cultivate spiritual power. So just follow me obediently. I won't let you suffer. Tang Yu comforted him and left. Lin Xian took out a small white porcelain bottle and placed the scarlet pill into it. Then he carefully put it away. This was a healing pill. Its effects were amazing. He always put it away, saving it for when he needed it. Putting away the pill, Lin Xian walked back to his room. He wanted to reach the 9th level of the refinement realm as soon as possible and try to open his spiritual pulse again. Chapter 2. Unfilial disciple Lin Xian has repeatedly violated the family rules. He will be stripped of his title as the young mansion master and expelled from the sword pool mansion. Humph! This kind of person should have been expelled long ago. He'll only embarrass the sword pool mansion if we keep him around. What's the use of having a good comprehension ability? He's nothing if he can't unlock his spirit meridians. That's right. A piece of trash who can't unlock his spirit meridians is actually the young mansion master. What a joke. Endless ridicule and curses drowned Lin Xian like a flood of wild beasts. Lin Xian suddenly opened his eyes and sat up abruptly. His body was covered in cold sweat. The morning sun shone into the room, through the window. It brought a trace of warmth and pulled him back to the real world. I'm having this nightmare again. Lin Xian smiled bitterly. When he was very young, he had displayed an astonishing talent in martial arts. He could master some martial arts just by looking at it once. Everyone thought that he was a martial arts genius and had high hopes for him. However, to everyone's surprise, he could not unlock his spirit meridians. A martial artist could only gather the spiritual energy in his body and unlock the spirit meridians in his body to gain more power. However, Lin Xian could not unlock his spirit meridians, no matter what he did. Therefore, Lin Xian was abandoned by his family. He rubbed his face and flipped the blanket over. He got out of bed and grabbed the water bottle on the table and gulped down 2 mouthfuls of water. This was a simple and crude room. There was only a wooden bed and an old table in the room. Lin Xian was holding a coarse hemp robe. He was halfway through putting it on when he heard the door being kicked open with a bang. The first person to enter the room was the white-robed young man, Chen Feng. There were more than 10 people behind him. He said arrogantly, "Kid, come with us. What do you want?" Lin Xian asked coldly as he slowly put on his clothes. "How dare you be so rude, as a mere sword slave?" Chen Feng pulled out his sword with a clang and pointed the cold sword tip at Lin Xian, emitting a faint murderous aura. Feeling the killing intent from the sword, Lin Xian unconsciously touched the sword-shaped pendant he wore around his neck. It was given to him by his father before he died. It stored a certain amount of spiritual power and was meant for him to use in case he died. Touching the pendant in front of his chest, Lin Xian calmed down. The other party was a level 2 psychic. If they really wanted to kill him, he would risk his life to drag one of them down with him. When they saw Lin Xian wasn't terrified to the point of trembling like the other sword servants, those white-clothed disciples were slightly surprised, whereas Chen Feng was even more infuriated. Even a sword servant wasn't afraid of him. If news of this were to spread, how would he be able to show his face? All right, Chen Feng, don't forget our objective. Are you going to take responsibility if we waste any time? The young man in the lead stopped the enraged Chen Feng. Brat, follow us. We have something we need you to do. The young man in the lead, Zhang Bin, said coldly. Lin Xian glanced at the sword servants behind them and thought, a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. I will follow them first. I want to see what they want to do. Nodding his head expressionlessly, Lin Xian walked over. When Chen Feng saw Lin Xian walking into the group, he sneered in his heart, I will see how you die later. The young man in the lead, Zhang Bin, waved his hand and said, Everyone, follow me. The group of people quickly walked towards the forest near the Mysterious Sky sect. The Mysterious Sky sect was one of the 3 great sects in the Cloud region. It was located in the outer area of the Taiyang Mountains. The disciples of the sect would often go to the mountains to hunt and gather herbs, but it was only in the outer area. The Taiyang Mountains were filled with ferocious beasts. The deeper one went, the more dangerous it would be. Without strength, one would only be courting death in the mountains. Lin Xian followed the white-clothed disciples to a cave. The surroundings were overgrown with weeds and vines. At the entrance of the cave, there was a fiery red lingji mushroom. It was like a ball of bright red flame. When the white-clothed disciples looked at the fire lingji, their eyes were filled with greed. They all swallowed their saliva. Zhang Bin suppressed the excitement in his heart and said, All sword servants, listen up. There is a small snake in the cave. You all lure it out. The farther the better. If you fail, or if anyone tries to escape, I will be the first to kill him. When he said this, his eyes suddenly focused and a tyrannical aura burst out from his body. Lin Xian's heart sank. He cursed in his heart. These guys wanted to use them to lure the ferocious beast away so that they could pick the fire lingji. But how could it be so easy to lure the ferocious beast away? He could smell the aroma of the fire lingji from so far away, not to mention the other beasts, but none of them dared to come. Even the surroundings were terrifyingly quiet. One could imagine how powerful the ferocious beast in the cave was. Lin Xian was not an ordinary sword servant. He was once the young master of the Sword Pool Mansion. His knowledge far surpassed others. These white-clothed disciples obviously wanted to use the lives of the sword servants to exchange for the fire lingji. You go to the front. Chen Feng sneered and pointed at Lin Xian. His eyes were filled with ridicule. Damn it, Lin Xian cursed in his heart. He unwillingly walked to the front. Once again, he experienced the tragedy of not having strength. Even his own fate was in the hands of others. Only after tasting this feeling would one know how miserable it was. You want me to die? Then I will make sure you can't pick the fire lingji. Lin Xian kept looking around, thinking about how to ruin these people's plan. Brother Feng, that kid won't ruin it, right? A disciple asked. Don't worry. What can a little sword servant do? Let's get ready to pick the fire lingji, Chen Feng said with a smile. The 11 sword servants carefully walked towards the cave. The closer they got to the cave, the stronger the dangerous aura became. Lin Xian felt the hair on his back stand up. The medicinal fragrance of the fire Lingji became stronger and stronger. At the same time, a fishy smell drifted out from the cave. When they were 5 meters away from the cave, Lin Xian's heart suddenly trembled. His innate intuition made him feel a huge sense of danger. He instantly jumped to the side. The moment Lin Xian jumped, a rainbow flew out like lightning and pierced through the people in front of it. Blood splattered in the air. A huge head poked out from the cave. It was as big as a table. Its dark green eyes were larger than a human's head and emitted a faint, cold light. Damn it, is this a little snake? Lin Xian cursed. He hated Chen Feng and the others to the extreme. There was no need for anyone to instruct them, and those sword servants fled like the wind towards the distance. The giant blue-eyed snake slid out of the cave. Its scarlet tongue was like a sharp sword, and instantly pierced through the sword servant closest to it. Lin Xian didn't stop. He turned around and ran. He didn't run towards an open area, but into the forest. Zhang Bin and the others didn't care about him. They only thought about the fire Lingji. They had already quietly circled around to the cave. The giant blue-eyed snake slithered out of the cave. Its body was over 10 meters long. It quickly slithered towards the sword servants in front of it. Its bloody mouth was already open. When Zhang Bin and the others saw the snake leave the cave, they hurriedly ran towards the fire Lingji. They quickly arrived at the entrance of the cave. Lin Xian didn't leave. Instead, he found a safe place to secretly watch while thinking about the future. Zhang Bin and the others would definitely find trouble with him when they returned. At that time, he wouldn't be able to stop them. Before he had time to think about it, a shocking change occurred in the cave. The giant azure-eyed snake felt that someone had set their eyes on the fire-glossy mushroom, and its tail that was as thick as a water bucket suddenly lashed out. Moreover, it gave up on the fleeing sword servant and stared at Zhang Bin and the others with its dark green eyes. Bang! The thick snake tail hit the ground and instantly shattered the ground. Zhang Bin and the others quickly dodged. The fire Lingji was also thrown into the air. This beast is crazy. Zhang Bin was so scared that his face turned green. He continuously retreated. The falling fire Lingji was caught by another disciple. "Brother Bin, it's in our hands," the disciple shouted. Just as he finished speaking, a black shadow flashed by. The giant blue-eyed snake's tail directly hit the disciple and sent him flying. "Go!" Zhang Bin shouted. The white-clothed disciples all fled into the forest. They wished they had wings. Lin Xian was very close to the disciple who was sent flying. He looked at the fire Lingji in the disciple's hand. He clenched his teeth and ran over to take the fire Lingji. F***CK. It's the sword servant. "Kid, hand over the fire Lingji." Chen Feng roared from behind. Boom. Rows of trees fell. The giant blue-eyed snake's huge body charged into the forest and crazily chased after Zhang Bin, Chen Feng, and the others. Lin Xian did not hesitate. He put the fire Lingji into his clothes, turned around, and ran. Zhang Bin and the others first wanted him to die. Now they want to kill him. How could he give the fire Lingji away? Just now he had observed the surroundings and thought of an escape route. Now that he had the fire-glossy Ganoderma in his hands, Lin Xian ran even faster. He kept twisting and turning in the forest and almost lost the people behind him a few times. Humph! Zhang Bin's eyes flashed a cold light. He pulled out the long sword in his hand and slashed towards Lin Xian. At the same time, the other disciples' bodies lit up and rushed towards Lin Xian. Lin Xian hurriedly activated the sword-shaped pendant. With the help of the spiritual energy inside, his speed increased again. Lin Xian's speed shocked everyone. They could not imagine how a third-level spirit apostle sword servant could be so fast. Exploding chi cut, Zhang Bin shouted and slashed out with the long sword in his hand. Lin Xian only felt a strong force from behind and sent him flying. His body rolled a few times on the ground before he could stabilize himself. Zhang Bin and the others were less than 2 meters away from him. The cold light from their long swords enveloped him. He clenched his teeth and took out the fire lingji. He swallowed it and activated the sword-shaped pendant, ready to fight to the death. "Kid, you're looking for death." When Zhang Bin and the others saw Lin Xian swallow the fire lingji, they were mad and wanted to tear him apart. When the giant blue-eyed snake saw this, it let out a furious hiss and charged over like a small mountain. Its speed was so fast that it broke all the trees in front of it. Zhang Bin and the others were sent flying. Even Lin Xian was sent flying by the huge force. Chapter 3. The berserk blue-eyed snake sent everyone flying. Lin Xian did not have much spiritual energy left, and many parts of his body were heavily injured. Fortunately, he had swallowed the fire lingji in advance, and the strong medicinal power dissolved his injuries, but even so, he still spat out large mouthfuls of blood. His body fell into the ravine, and this fall nearly broke all the bones in his body. The front of his clothes had long been dyed red. Lin Xian did not notice that when his blood touched the sword-shaped pendant, it all strangely disappeared. Boom! With another strike from the snake's tail, Lin Xian was sent flying again. This time, he directly fainted, and the dragon-shaped pendant completely entered his body, turning into a ray of light and disappearing in a flash. The sword-shaped pendant drilled into his dantian, constantly trembling, and the surrounding spiritual energy quickly rushed towards Lin Xian. A small black hole formed in his abdomen, and all the spiritual energy was sucked in. Some of the spiritual energy drilled into Lin Xian's body, flowing everywhere and constantly attacking Lin Xian's meridians. It must be known that Lin Xian's spiritual meridians had not been opened, so when the remaining spiritual energy entered, the pain was 10 times more painful than when he opened his own spiritual meridians. Lin Xian was awakened from his coma by the pain. He clenched his teeth and endured it, not knowing what had happened. When he found the culprit, he almost went crazy. The small sword in his body was his pendant, and it was currently crazily devouring spiritual energy. Although most of the spiritual energy was devoured by the small sword, the small amount that leaked out was not something that Lin Xian could digest. Damn, I've already reached the 9th level of the body refinement realm. If this continues, I'll break through my meridians. There were 9 spiritual meridians in the human body, and only by opening the spiritual meridians could spiritual energy circulate in the body and produce power. Lin Xian's cultivation was like a rocket, rapidly rising and quickly reaching the peak of the body refinement realm. He clenched his teeth and prepared to use this power to break through the spiritual meridians. He endured the pain and worked hard to concentrate, preparing to break through the first spiritual meridians in his body. Both hands forming a seal, Lin Xian used all his strength to break through. The spiritual energy in his body gathered together and rushed towards the first spiritual meridians. Boom! It was as if there was an invisible wall blocking in front of him. The spiritual energy was dispersed, and Lin Xian's cultivation level quickly dropped. Finally, it fell to 3rd level spirit apostle. This again, Lin Xian roared unwillingly. He had already tried to break through twice, but each time he was bounced back. It was as if there was a mysterious force in his body that firmly locked him in place. Again, Lin Xian refused to give up. He once again gathered the spiritual energy in his body and rushed towards the spirit vein. Rumble, the 2 forces collided, and Lin Xian's body emitted a rumbling sound. He was impacted, and once again spat out a large mouthful of blood. At this moment, a gentle force appeared in his body. Lin Xian knew that it was the medicinal power of the fire lingji. Fortunately, He had swallowed it in advance. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. As the spiritual energy accumulated in Lin Xian's body, he felt an incomparable swelling pain. Damn it, you're still absorbing? Hurry up and stop. Lin Xian could now clearly see everything in his body. He anxiously scolded, but the small sword did not react at all. With so much spiritual energy, he should be able to break through the seal. Lin Xian decided to break through again, but this time he failed. His fate was to explode from the spiritual energy. Fight! Even if there is a glimmer of hope, I still have to try. Lin Xian was such a person. He would not give up until the last moment. This time, the endless spiritual energy turned into a stream of anger and rushed towards the unopened spirit vein. Boom! The collision was like a clap of thunder. Black ripples appeared in Lin Xian's body. These ripples wrapped around his spirit vein and formed a black lotus, mysterious and demonic. This black lotus overflowed with a trace of black gas. It was like thick ink exuding an ancient aura that blocked the spiritual energy outside. What is this? Lin Xian opened his eyes wide and looked at the black lotus in disbelief. Why is there such a thing in my body? He vaguely guessed that his inability to open the spirit vein was related to this mysterious black lotus. Do I have to be a spirit apostle for the rest of my life? I don't want to. Lin Xian suddenly felt a surge of anger. He hated his fate, hated the black lotus in his body, and hated that his fate was controlled by others. Wang. The small sword seemed to feel Lin Xian's emotions and violently trembled. Its body emitted a dreamy light, and with a flash, the black lotus was cut in half. Lin Xian did not expect the small sword to be so powerful that it could cut the mysterious black lotus in half. He immediately gathered his spiritual energy and rushed towards the spirit vein. Without the obstruction of the black lotus, Lin Xian relied on his abundant spiritual energy to quickly open the first spirit vein. The spirit vein was like a river, guiding the spiritual energy and forming a complete cycle in his body. The small sword also stopped devouring the spiritual energy and floated in Lin Xian's body. Everything returned to normal. Lin Xian slowly exhaled, and his mind completely relaxed. The scene just now was too unbelievable, and he still did not dare to believe it. What is that black lotus, and why did it appear in my body? Lin Xian could not understand how the sword-shaped pendant had appeared in his body, and its origins seemed to be even more mysterious than the black lotus. The sword-shaped pendant was given to him by Lin Xian's father, and it had just helped him open the black lotus, allowing him to open the spirit vein. Therefore, Lin Xian felt that the mysterious small sword would not harm him. Lin Xian checked his body and found that his injuries had already healed and his cultivation had already reached the late stage of the pulse condensation stage. He would soon break through to the second stage of the pulse condensation stage. No matter what, I have already opened the spirit vein and can cultivate in the future. I must return to the Sword Pool Mansion and fulfill my father's last wish. He was originally a member of the Sword Pool Mansion, but he was framed and expelled from the Sword Pool Mansion. Now that he could cultivate and was no longer a good-for-nothing, he must take back everything that he had lost. If I can become a core disciple of the Black Sky sect, I should be able to return to the Sword Pool Mansion smoothly. Lin Xian made up his mind and immediately set off. The Black Sky sect had a strict hierarchy, and the disciples were divided into outer, inner, and core disciples. It was not easy for Lin Xian to stand out among the countless young disciples. There is an entrance examination at the beginning of every month. If you pass the examination, you can become an outer disciple. Lin Xian had been here for 3 months, and he had already figured out the basic situation. He leaped up and ran in the direction of the sect. In the forest, a few white-clothed youths were running away in a sorry state. Their clean clothes were stained with blood and mud. Damn it, I almost died here. If it wasn't for the fact that the blue-eyed snake alerted another vicious beast and was intercepted, we would have been finished today. These miserable youths were Zhang Bin and the others. They had successfully survived, but out of the original dozen or so people, only 4 remained. It's all because of that sword slave called Lin Xian that we returned empty-handed and wasted a fire Lingji for nothing. I wonder if he's dead or not. I really hope he's not dead. That way, I'll have the chance to let him know what it means to live a life worse than death. Humph. A 3rd-stage spirit apostle would have died long ago after receiving that kind of attack. How could he still be alive? Let's go back quickly. So many sword slaves have died. We need to quickly replenish their blood. The 4 of them rested for a moment before running back. They did not stop along the way and finally walked out of the dark forest. Brother Feng, look at that person, a youth exclaimed. Chun Feng and Zhang Bin looked over. In front of them on the left, there was a figure covered in mud. They could vaguely make out that he was wearing gray linen clothes. That person was running towards the mysterious sword sect. It's that brat. He's not dead. Chun Feng exclaimed. Damn it, watch how I kill him. Let's go. Let him know that my fire Lingji is not so delicious. Zhang Bin said with a gloomy face. Whoosh whoosh. The 4 of them increased their speed, bringing with them a gust of wind. Soon, they caught up to Lin Xian. Whoosh! The 4 of them surrounded Lin Xian. Chun Feng said with a sinister smile, Brat, I didn't expect you to still be alive. This is good too. I want to kill you bit by bit. Don't kill him. He ate the fire Lingji, so his blood should be filled with medicinal power. Wouldn't it be better to bring him back and use his blood for our cultivation every day? Zhang Bin was like a demon as he laughed sinisterly. Lin Xian took a deep breath and placed his hand on the sword hilt. The mysterious sky sect was already in front of him, but he did not expect to be robbed. Of the 4 people in front of him, Zhang Bin's strength had reached the 3rd level of the meridian condensing stage, which was also the 3rd level of the spirit night. Zhang Bin was at the 2nd level of the meridian condensing stage, while the other 2 were about the same strength as Lin Xian at the 1st level of the meridian condensing stage. It could be said that under normal circumstances, Lin Xian would definitely lose. However, Lin Xian did not panic. His expression was calm, and the hand holding the sword was steady and powerful. His gaze fell on Chun Feng, who was in front of him. This place was already very close to the sect. As long as he broke out of the encirclement, he had the confidence to enter the sect. Once he entered the sect, he would be relatively safe. These people looked down on him, so they would not be too serious. This was a good opportunity for him to make a move, and once he made a move, he had to succeed because these people would not give him a second chance. In other words, he only had one chance to make a move. Thinking of this, Lin Xian's heart suddenly had a trace of excitement. The sword move that he had practiced for 3 years. What kind of power would it have after he had spiritual power? Break his legs first so he can't escape. Chun Feng pulled out his long sword and swept it towards Lin Xian's legs. At this moment, Lin Xian moved. He quickly pulled out his sword, and his body soared into the sky like a meteor streaking across the sky, flashing past. Pooh! Lin Xian stabbed out with his sword and ran towards the sect without looking back. His speed shocked everyone. Ah, my hand! At the same time, Chun Feng held his right arm and constantly screamed. Large amounts of blood flowed out, dyeing the ground red. Chapter 4. My hand! Chun Feng screamed in fear. His right arm was sliced open with a deep cut, and in some places his bones could be seen from the shadows. How could this be? Zhang Bin and the rest did not chase after him. That sword was too strange, and Lin Xian's aura was definitely not at the 3rd-rank body refinement realm. Could it be that he was hiding his strengths? Zhang Bin was puzzled. It could also be the effect of the fire Lingji that allowed him to break through to the pulse condensation realm. Your blood. I must have it. You two, hurry and bring him back to the sect, Zhang Bin ordered. The two carried Qinfeng and quickly walked back to the profound sky sect. Zhang Bin followed behind, his eyes flashing. No one knew what he was thinking. Lin Xian sprinted all the way back to his house. He closed the door and tried to calm himself down. To be honest, the power of that sword was beyond his expectations. This sword move was given to him by his father, who told him to practice it well. Although this sword move looked ordinary, it was extremely powerful. However, it was only one move, and this move consumed a lot of spirit energy, almost a third of it. Thinking about spirit energy, Lin Xian became excited. After so many years, he could finally cultivate. He could not help but think of the small sword in his body. It was the small sword that allowed him to open up his spirit veins. And at the same time, it gave him the inner vision ability that only spirit transformation realm cultivators could have. The small sword was not made of metal or stone, and he did not know what material it was made of. It was about the length of a finger, and its entire body was colored like glass. Spirit energy constantly overflowed from it. Lin Xian tried to touch it, but there was no result. Seeing that there was no reaction, Lin Xian decided not to bother with it. He planned to use the remaining medicinal properties of the fire Lingji to continue cultivating. He was once a disciple of the Sword Pool Mansion. Although he was trash and did not have the opportunity to come into contact with martial arts books, he received a complete family inheritance from his father. His family's cultivation method was a profound rank cultivation method, and its power was incomparably strong. Lin Xian formed a seal with both hands and circulated his spirit energy according to his family's cultivation method. However, the moment he used it, the small glass sword in his body shook and scattered the spirit energy. And Lin Xian was taken aback. He once again formed a hand seal and activated it. He realized that the small glazed sword seemed to be intentionally stopping him from cultivating. Could it be that this sword has a mind of its own? Lin Xian could not make up his mind. But what was the meaning of not allowing him to cultivate? I say, you don't want me to practice my family's martial arts. Do you have a better one? Lin Xian muttered. The small glazed sword seemed to understand Lin Xian's words, and its body buzzed, releasing a golden light. Each of the golden lights was a small golden sword. These small swords turned into strange runes and drilled into his mind. Longevity art. This small glazed sword actually gave him a cultivation technique. Lin Xian was a little dazed. He quickly read through the longevity art. The name sounded very domineering, and some of the contents were much more profound than his family's cultivation method. Since the small sword did not allow him to cultivate other cultivation methods, he might as well cultivate the longevity art that it gave him. Lin Xian made up his mind. His hands formed a strange seal, and then he slowly closed his eyes and circulated the spirit energy in his body according to the chant. The golden spirit energy flowed in the spiritual vein. Every time it circulated, the spirit energy would grow stronger. Around the spiritual vein, it would connect with countless small meridians and circulate the spirit energy throughout his body. Lin Xian circulated the cultivation method over and over again. The spirit energy continued to grow, and the medicinal power hidden in his body was also stimulated. Gradually, the spirit energy gathered together through the small meridians and rushed to the second spiritual vein. Boom! The second spiritual vein was opened. Like a broken dam, an endless amount of spirit energy rushed in and continuously washed Lin Xian's body. Some impurities were expelled from his body, and Lin Xian quickly cleaned himself. I didn't expect that in just half a day, I would reach the second level of the meridian stage. Now, I am also a second-level spiritual knight. Lin Xian's body emitted a faint light, and his body was filled with power. With this kind of strength, I can definitely pass the outer sex test. However, I heard that the inner sex test is very difficult. It is almost 1 in 100. I really don't know what realm I have to reach to pass. Lin Xian sighed and began to cultivate the longevity art. What he lacked the most now was time, so he did not want to waste a single minute. When night came, the sky seemed to be covered with a layer of black cloth, and it was somewhat gloomy. The moon was covered by the clouds, and the stars in the sky were also hidden. A fierce wind blew between heaven and earth, blowing the trees, and the small brown wooden door made creaking sounds. Lin Xian opened his eyes and slowly spat out a mouthful of turbid air. He stood up, looked at the black clouds outside the house, and quickly closed the small wooden door. Now Lin Xian was still a sword slave, and the place he lived in was a remote mountain peak. Besides Lin Xian, there were no other people around. Rumble! A sudden clap of thunder sounded in the sky, causing people's eardrums to tremble. Lin Xian looked out the window and sighed. The most mysterious thing is still the power of heaven and earth. When can I reach the stage where I can move mountains and fill seas with a wave of my hand? Heaven and earth flashed again, followed by a rumbling sound. But at this moment, Lin Xian's heart jumped, and he quickly squatted down. Whoosh! An arrow brushed past the top of his head, and he could even feel the chill from the arrow. If he had not broken through to the second stage of the pulse condensation realm, and his hearing, vision, and other senses had not improved, just this arrow alone would have taken his life. Lin Xian hid under the windowsill and quickly guessed that it was Zhang Bin and the others. As for how many people, he did not know. The weak were prey to the strong. This was the law of survival in this world. Lin Xian had already experienced this. He waited quietly without moving. The enemy outside should be more anxious than him. After all, the weather outside was too bad. The rules of the Black Sky sect were strict. Disciples were allowed to fight, but killing was not allowed. Even sword slaves could not be killed casually. But if they left the Black Sky sect and entered the forest, then they could do whatever they wanted. Usually, no one would dare to kill in the sect, but today's heavy rain provided a very good environment for killing. Lin Xian gripped his long sword tightly. He was highly focused, ready to attack at any time. Sure enough, not long after, the wooden door shattered, and a figure quickly flashed in. Lin Xian seized the moment that person landed and stabbed his sword like a shooting star. That person did not expect this sword to be so tricky and could only raise his sword to block in a panic. Clang! The two swords collided and produced a string of sparks. That person's spiritual energy was obviously denser than Lin Xian's. Lin Xian's sword deviated from its target, but it still left a wound. That person groaned and quickly retreated. He urged his spiritual energy to wrap around the wound, and then cautiously stared at Lin Xian. Zhang Bin, I know it's you. There's no need to hide. Lin Xian said coldly, Humph, since you know, then obediently follow me. Zhang Bin said sinisterly, You've already been stabbed by me, and you're still talking big. Call your people out. Lin Xian was ready. Do I need to call people to kill you? I was careless just now, and let your sneak attack succeed. Let's see what you're going to do this time. Zhang Bin sneered. The long sword in his hand trembled, and the flowing cloud sword technique was released. It left sword shadows in the air and enveloped Lin Xian. Chapter 5. The sharp long sword was erratic like the clouds in the sky, making it impossible to predict where it would strike next. Zhang Bin's strength had reached the third level of the pulse condensation stage, and he was using a mid-grade yellow-level sword art. Even disciples of the same level wouldn't dare to casually receive such a powerful attack. Zhang Bin didn't think that Lin Xian could block it. Fortunately, Lin Xian had just broken through to the second level of the pulse condensation stage, and his strength had greatly increased. He constantly retreated, narrowly avoiding the sword. Damn, so strange. You can actually dodge it. Zhang Bin's sword missed, and he was somewhat absent-minded. So, you've broken through to the second level of the pulse condensation stage. This Fire Lingji's medicinal power is really strong, but such a good thing was wasted by trash like you. The more Zhang Bin spoke, the angrier he became, and his moves became more vicious. Boom. The long sword was wrapped in blue spirit power, and it suddenly blasted open the wooden wall. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed in, and the entire room shook. I'm not in the mood to drag things out with you. Go die for me, and I'll take your blood. Zhang Bin's aura became even stronger, and the long sword in his hand glowed. You call this a sword art? Lin Xian bluntly attacked. In my opinion, it's full of flaws. Lin Xian took a step forward, and the long sword in his hand suddenly changed. The tip of the sword emitted a cold light, leaving a string of sword shadows in the air. Clear breeze sword art. This is impossible, Zhang Bin exclaimed. This is a high-grade, yellow-level sword art. How did a sword slave like you learn it? Lin Xian's mouth curved into a sneer, and the long sword in his hand cooperated with the gust of wind outside, forming an invisible sword energy in the room. Just you wait. Zhang Bin was frightened, and he quickly rushed out of the room, disappearing into the storm. Lin Xian put away the black iron sword and let out a sigh of relief. He practiced with Tang Yu all day long, and he had already seen the moves of the clear breeze sword art. However, it was only in appearance. He didn't know the sword art's mental cultivation method, so its strength was pitifully weak. It was fine to scare people like Zhang Bin, but in a real fight, this move wouldn't cause any damage at all. This Zhang Bin will definitely not let this matter rest. It's not easy for me to get into a conflict with him right now, so I'll settle the score with him after I join the Xianzhen sect. With the wooden hut in tatters, it was impossible for him to sleep. Lin Xian sat down cross-legged and began cultivating the chant of longevity again. Even before entering the sect, he had already offended many disciples. Without sufficient strength, it was impossible for him to survive. Forming a seal with both hands, Lin Xian entered a state of cultivation. A faint cyan glow appeared on the surface of his body, like a lonely lamp in the dark night. The next morning, the rain stopped. The entire mountain peak was exceptionally fresh, and there was the fragrance of the earth everywhere. Lin Xian woke up from his meditation, stretched his muscles and bones, and then began to practice his sword. It was still the same sword technique that was as fast as a meteor. Although practicing this move was a bit boring, he still practiced it meticulously. Lin Xian had already demonstrated the power of this sword technique the night before. Although he didn't know the level of this technique, Lin Xian knew that it wasn't inferior to any other sword technique. He could even feel a special sword intent from this sword technique. However, the only drawback was that it consumed too much spirit energy. With Lin Xian's current strength, he could only use it 3 times at most before his spirit energy was exhausted. Therefore, this sword technique was suitable for defeating enemies in one move. So early? Just as Lin Xian was practicing his sword, Tang Yu walked over from afar with a smile. When he saw the small wooden house, his delicate little face immediately turned cold. What's going on? Who did it? Tang Yu asked. It's fine. I can take care of it myself. Lin Xian shook his head. You. Tang Yu rolled her eyes at him, and then her little mouth formed an O shape. Second stage spiritual night. You broke through? Lin Xian shrugged and said with a smile, I just practiced and broke through. Tang Yu put her hands behind her back and walked around Lin Xian 3 times. Seeing this, Lin Xian got goosebumps. What are you trying to do? Lin Xian asked cautiously. You are so boring. Tang Yu curled her lips. After you pass the outer disciple test, how about following me? Following you? Lin Xian raised his eyebrows. Think about it. He knew that the disciples of Xianzhen's sect were divided into many factions. They were competing with each other, and many resources were controlled by them. Therefore, after entering the outer sect, the first thing he would do would be to join one of the factions. Don't worry, after entering the outer sect, I will take care of you. Tang Yu patted her well-developed chest and said proudly. The days of cultivation passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was time for the outer disciple test. Lin Xian's cultivation broke through again, reaching the third stage of the meridian stage. He could already condense spiritual energy on the sword, and his attack power had almost doubled. The outer disciple test was mainly for the disciples of the aristocratic families. Only a small portion of the sword slaves participated. Lin Xian was wearing a gray linen robe, standing among a group of youngsters wearing brocade clothes. He looked a little out of the ordinary. Whose servant is this? He's dressed too shabbily. Someone mocked. This is a sword slave from Xiantian sect. I guess he is also here to participate in the test. What? A sword slave? Many disciples of the aristocratic families sneered. Isn't that still a servant? He really doesn't know what's good for him. Is this a test that he can participate in? You guys are having a good time chatting. Lin Xian walked in large strides to the front of the disciples. His aura was released and his body bloomed with a green light. These disciples were all at the first stage of the meridian stage, and the highest was at the second stage. In front of Lin Xian, they were completely insignificant. At this moment, they were suppressed by his aura to the point of trembling. Lin Xian coldly snorted, giving these people a warning. Sure enough, this group of disciples of the aristocratic families became very obedient. However, there were a few people who secretly hated Lin Xian in their hearts. Mother of Astor's cur, what are you being so arrogant for? This young master's brother is in the outer sect. After the test, see how I will teach you a lesson. Many disciples of the aristocratic families prepared to retaliate against Lin Xian. Not long after, several young disciples of the Xiantian sect walked out. One of them was a youth. He said in a clear voice, "This time, I am in charge of the outer sect test. The test rules are very simple. Defeat the bamboo forest guard, and you pass. You can do it alone or as a team. Follow me." The youth led everyone to a passage and asked, "Who will be first?" Lin Xian couldn't help but size up the passage. It was 3 meters wide and 10 meters long. 2 rows of guards stood on both sides of the passage. They held bamboo swords in their hands and stood motionless. After carefully observing, Lin Xian was slightly startled. These so-called bamboo forest guards were actually made of bamboo and not real people. Many disciples of the aristocratic families also noticed this situation and began to chat with each other. "Isn't it just a group of puppets? Let me." As they spoke, a purple-clothed youth arrogantly walked out. The long sword in his hand was suffused with a green light. His feet moved quickly, and he rushed forward. In the passage, a green bamboo forest guard stood out. 2 lights flashed in his eye sockets as he pointed his green bamboo sword forward. Chapter 6. The purple-clothed youth's strength was at the second level of the pulse condensation stage. His strength was considered average among the participants. He used a broadsword that was twice as wide as a normal longsword. The blade was also relatively thick, so it should be classified as a heavy sword. Mountain splitter sword. The purple-clothed youth held the sword with both hands and leaned forward. Using all his strength, he slashed at the bamboo forest guard. With a loud bang, the bamboo forest guard easily dodged the heavy sword. The long sword struck the ground and smashed a large hole in it. The sword was powerful, but its speed was slow. When the purple-clothed youth withdrew his sword, the bamboo forest guard's green bamboo sword stabbed out like lightning. It touched the purple-clothed youth's right shoulder and sent him flying. Seeing the second level pulse condensation stage, purple-clothed youth lose. The first level pulse condensation stage, its expressions changed again and again. Many of them had thoughts of retreating. Lin Xian was not in a hurry to act. He wanted to observe the bamboo forest guard. At this time, a voice sounded from the crowd. "Let's go!" A man and a woman walked forward. The man was handsome and tall, while the woman was beautiful. The two of them had similar eyebrows, so they must be brother and sister. "Sister, you help me," the youth said. The two of them used their swords to meet the bamboo forest guard. The two fine steel swords worked together and quickly broke through the bamboo forest guard's defense. Clang! The youth's sword slashed across the bamboo forest guard's body, leaving a shallow sword mark. It had to be said that the bamboo forest guard's defense was too abnormal. The youth was slightly stunned. He did not expect the bamboo forest guard's defense to be so strong. At this time, the green bamboo sword had already arrived in front of him. Clang! The young girl acted in time to neutralize the killing move. After that, the bamboo forest guard's attacks were all blocked by the young girl, while the youth was responsible for attacking with all his strength. Finally, after 30 rounds, the youth's sword cut off the bamboo forest guard's head and successfully passed. After that, there were a few people who successfully passed through with their cooperation, but even more people were defeated by the bamboo forest guard's sword. Through these observations, Lin Xian also understood some information. The more people that formed a team, the more bamboo forest guards would participate in the battle. In a 3-man team, there were 2 bamboo forest guards. In a 5-man team, there were 3 bamboo forest guards. However, these bamboo forest guards were all emerald green in color. The bamboo forest guards with red spots and golden threads on their bodies did not participate in the battle from beginning to end. Lin Xian thought that the 2 types of puppets should be of a higher level. Most of the people in the field had already finished their tests. Lin Xian did not intend to wait any longer. When the accompanying disciples saw that it was Lin Xian, he hurriedly whispered a few words to the young man in charge. A smile appeared on the young man's face. Lin Xian's heart tightened. No matter how he looked at it, that smile didn't have good intentions. Sure enough, a bamboo forest guard with red spots on his body walked out and faced Lin Xian from a distance. This red-spotted bamboo forest guard's aura was completely different from the previous ones. The speed of his sword was more than twice as fast. Every sword forced Lin Xian to use all his strength to deal with it. If it was someone else, they would have already been defeated. Only someone like Lin Xian, who had a special understanding of sword techniques, could withstand it. "This is definitely targeting me." Lin Xian swatted away the bamboo forest guard's sword. He was somewhat angry in his heart. In the distance, 2 figures were hidden in the shadows, watching everything that was happening. "Is this the disciple with abnormal talent you were talking about?" A handsome young man laughed. "Yes, he has a unique understanding of sword techniques. He is a rare genius." The one who spoke was actually Tang Yu. Even geniuses need to grow up. This guy provoked a strong enemy before he even entered the sect. He actually sent the red bamboo forest guard to deal with him. "Let's wait until he passes this stage," the handsome young man said. At this time, the red-spotted bamboo forest guard raised his sword high. The sword's body was suffused with a red light, which was incomparably dazzling. With a wave of his arm, the sword was like a rainbow, enveloping Lin Xian. "This is a sword technique." Someone in the crowd cried out in surprise. Sword techniques were the killing moves of sword techniques. They were extremely powerful. For example, Lin Xian's meteor-like sword technique was a type of sword technique. I don't know who this person provoked. He actually sent out such a strong bamboo forest guard. Even a fourth-level meridian condensing realm spiritual knight might not be able to withstand this attack. When the disciples of the aristocratic families who were hostile to Lin Xian saw this scene, they repeatedly cheered. They wished that Lin Xian would be beheaded by the sword. The bamboo forest guard's weakness is their head. I think this red-spotted bamboo forest guard is no exception. Lin Xian did not retreat. He grasped his black iron sword tightly and rushed forward. The sword light flashed like a meteor falling from the 9 heavens, bringing along a dazzling sword light. Chi. Lin Xian rushed back 4 to 5 meters. He knelt on the ground with one knee. Blood dripped from his shoulder. The red-spotted bamboo forest guard's head rolled on the ground. Only the headless body was left standing there silently. Everyone was silent. The youth did not expect this outcome. He frowned and stared at Lin Xian with an unfriendly expression. At this moment, a delicate voice sounded, "Lin Xian, well done." The young man turned around and saw Tang Yu walking over with a smile on her face. Beside her was a handsome young man who kept staring at Lin Xian. Seeing Tang Yu and the handsome youth appear, the youth knew that he could only drop the matter today. He did not expect that the handsome youth would be the first to speak. "Where did you learn this sword technique?" "I picked it up in the Taiyang Mountains." Lin Xian casually made up a story. The youth's tone was like interrogating a criminal, which made him very uncomfortable. "What is it called?" the handsome youth continued to ask. Lin Xian looked at the youth and seriously said, "Outer space meteor." Outer space meteor? Everyone present had never heard of this name. They all stared at Lin Xian curiously, hoping that he would explain it in detail. However, Lin Xian did not have such thoughts. He stood to the side and quietly waited for the test to end. "Lin Xian, join our battle group," Tang Yu asked. There were countless disciples in the Black Heaven sect which gave rise to countless small groups. This battle group was one of the more famous ones. "Our Shen Wei group also welcomes junior brother to join," the youth suddenly said. The youth's attitude stunned many disciples, but no one dared to say anything. Even the disciple who was whispering to the youth just now was at a loss. Lin Xian cupped his hands and smiled. "Thank you for your kindness, senior brothers. I will consider it." Seeing Lin Xian like this, they could not say anything else. They could only wait for the test to end. Lin Xian was expressionless, but he was a little worried. It was obvious that the handsome youth and the youth in charge had taken a fancy to his sword technique. Otherwise, they would not have acted that way. Looks like life in the outer sect won't be too peaceful. Lin Xian sighed. He would not hand over the sword technique. Finally, the test ended. A total of 13 people passed the test. Congratulations on joining the outer sect of the Black Heaven sect. I will bring you to collect the basic items for outer sect disciples. You can live here from now on. The youth in charge led everyone away. At this moment, the handsome youth suddenly said, "Wait." Chapter 7. Seeing that Lin Xian was about to leave, the handsome young man suddenly stopped him. "Wait. What's the matter, junior brother Duan?" The young man in charge asked. "Senior brother Lu, wait a moment. I still have some things to say to junior brother Lin," the handsome young man said. He didn't care about the young man's reaction, and directly said to Lin Xian, "A high-grade yellow rank sword art in exchange for your move. At the same time, after you join the combat group, I guarantee that no one will dare to touch you." "Sorry, I'm not interested," Lin Xian said indifferently. This move was passed down to him by his father. No matter what, he wouldn't pass it on to anyone else. The young man shrugged, and then left with the newcomers, leaving only the handsome young man and Tang Yu in the same place. "Tang Yu, are you familiar with that kid?" "No." Tang Yu was a little angry. "Duan Fei, I'm warning you, don't you dare have any ideas about him." "Don't worry, I don't care about this sword art." Duan Fei's lips curled into a smile, but his eyes had a trace of coldness. The young man in charge brought Lin Xian and the others to get their identity cards and register their identities. Then he explained some things and let everyone move freely. Most of these new disciples were from aristocratic families. Many of their brothers and sisters were in the Black Heaven sect. After disbanding, these people went to find their own small factions. Lin Xian only knew Tang Yu in the Black Heaven sect. Originally, Tang Yu wanted him to join the combat group, but after seeing the handsome young man's attitude today, he didn't want to join the combat group. Holding the basic manual in his hand, Lin Xian walked towards the mission hall. In the Black Heaven sect, all resources were exchanged with contribution points and spirit stones. For example, a low-grade yellow-ranked sword art required 100 contribution points and 30 spirit stones to exchange. The contribution points were obtained by completing missions issued by the sect. Some missions were simple, but the contribution points were low. Those missions with high contribution points were mostly dangerous. It could be said that danger and opportunity coexisted. Lin Xian's strength was at the 3rd level of the pulse condensation period. According to what he knew in the outer sect, the 3rd level of the pulse condensation period was considered the middle level, but the 4th or 5th level of the pulse condensation period was considered the upper level. If he wanted to participate in the inner sect examination 3 months from now, he had to first reach the 5th level of the pulse condensation period. Only then would he have enough assurance. And to raise my cultivation by 2 stages in 3 months, I need medicinal pills, martial arts, weapons, spirit stones. Lin Xian felt a headache coming on as he thought about it. I can only work hard to earn contribution points. Chapter 8. The mission that Lin Xian accepted was none other than the sword repair mission that he was familiar with. This was a level 4 mission that required a total of 30 contribution points and 20 low-grade spirit stones to repair 3 long swords. Level 4 missions were considered relatively difficult in the outside world. In addition, this mission required 3 long swords to be repaired at the same time. Thus, no one accepted it for a long time. It just so happened that Lin Xian took advantage of it. When Lin Xian took the mission plate to register, the disciple in charge of registration looked at him in surprise and reminded him, "Look carefully. You can only get contribution points if you repair 3 swords. You can't get any less. If you repair them, you will have to compensate. You have to think carefully." The registration disciple did not believe that Lin Xian could repair them. This mission had been placed here for a long time, and no one had accepted it. This was enough to show how difficult it was. Lin Xian nodded, indicating that he understood. The registration disciple did not say anything. Instead, he took out 3 slightly narrower, long swords and handed them to Lin Xian. "You can take them back, but you can also complete them here," the registration disciple said. Lin Xian roughly glanced at it and found that it was a little complicated. He asked, "Senior brother, I wonder if there are any similar missions to repair weapons. You can repair these first." The registration disciple dismissed him. "You have to be down to earth when doing things." Lin Xian smiled helplessly and carried the 3 long swords back. Repairing weapons was a technical job that required some secret techniques. As a disciple of the Sword Pool Mansion, he had been learning how to repair weapons since he was young. Although he could not be called a master, he could still deal with these things. The Sword Pool Mansion was very famous in the Xia Kingdom. It was not only because of their powerful strength, but also because of their ability to repair weapons. In the Lingwu continent, there was a special profession called the weapon nurturer. They could use extraordinary methods to repair weapons and even increase the power of weapons. The Sword Pool Mansion had some special attainments in the cultivation of long swords. Thus, in the Xia Kingdom, they were also called sword nurturers. In the Sword Pool Mansion, there was a huge sword pool with tens of thousands of swords. The sword nurturers usually worked there. Lin Xian grew up soaking in the water of the sword pool when he was young. Lin Xian returned to his new residence and closed the door. This was the residential area for the outer disciples. Everyone had their own small house, and the decorations inside were many times better than the previous house. He placed the 3 swords on the table, drank some water, and then picked up a dark red sword. Lin Xian cut his fingertip and used his blood to draw a rune on the crack. The spirit qi in the air condensed into small dots of light and gathered towards the rune like hundreds of fireflies dancing in the air. Although it was just a small rune, it contained the painstaking efforts of several generations. Every half an incense stick's worth of time, Lin Xian would redraw it. After 3 times, the gap on the dark red sword had disappeared. With a spurt of energy, Lin Xian repaired the remaining 2 swords as well. It didn't take him much time to do so. However, his face was somewhat pale. After all, doing these things consumed a lot of spiritual energy and mental energy. He sat cross-legged and formed a seal with his hands. He circulated the secret art of long life with all his might. Traces of spiritual energy continuously circulated in his body. After an hour, Lin Xian opened his eyes. He had reached his peak state. 30 contribution points are mine. Lin Xian's lips curled into a smile. He carried the 3 swords and went straight to the Hall of Missions. What? You finished? So fast. The registration disciple's eyes widened. After carefully inspecting it, the registration disciple did not find anything wrong. What the hell? How did this guy fix it? The registration disciple was shocked. Senior brother, are there any similar missions? Yes. The registration disciple thought for a moment, then said with a serious expression, this mission is beyond the 4th level. Logically speaking, it should be done by an outer disciple. However, it's been too long. Why don't you give it a try? How's the pay? Lin Xian was focused on the contribution points. 100 contribution points, plus 50 low-grade spirit stones. The registration disciple said, 100. Lin Xian shouted, causing the surrounding disciples to look at him in confusion. He quickly lowered his voice. Senior brother, are you sure? When the registration disciple saw Lin Xian's nervous expression, he felt a little funny. You don't have to be nervous. Other than you, no one else will take this mission. The registration disciple said, but I have to remind you that this sword is very precious. If you are not confident, it's best not to take it. For the 100 contribution points, Lin Xian did not hesitate to say, I'll take it. The registration disciple wrote down the information, then carefully took out a rectangular box. This is a low-grade, human-grade artifact. The registration disciple opened the box and said, Lin Xian took a deep breath when he saw the longsword. A small portion of the 3-foot-long sword was covered in brown liquid. Lin Xian took the sword back and carefully examined it. He found that this low-grade, human-grade artifact was more damaged than he thought. It seems that I need to use some materials to repair this sword. Lin Xian held his chin with a serious face. There is a type of een grass that is very corrosive. It should be able to get rid of this brown stain. Lin Xian had some ideas and decided to go to the Taihang Mountains tomorrow. With an idea in mind, Lin Xian once again immersed himself in cultivation. In the past, Lin Xian could not open up his spirit veins, so he was not allowed to read the family's martial arts books. Now, he only had the Outer Sky Meteor, a set of family's basic sword techniques, and a set of basic movement techniques. Basic martial arts also had its advantages. It could be said that it was the prototype of all advanced martial arts. Take the basic sword techniques. For example, it included all the basic movements of a sword move and the correct way to exert force. Lin Xian quickly immersed himself in his practice. Early the next morning, Lin Xian left for the Taiyang Mountains. A gentle breeze blew in the forest, and the shadows of the trees danced. Lin Xian practiced his basic footwork as he hurried on his way. The Yin elemental grass grew on the shady side of the mountain. Lin Xian searched everywhere, but didn't find anything. After searching for a whole morning, Lin Xian still could not find it. He simply sat on the ground, took out some dry food, and ate. Not long after, there was the sound of fighting in front of him. There was also a faint roar of a beast. Lin Xian was curious. He moved his body and ran towards the source of the sound. Whoosh! Lin Xian hid in the nearby grass and looked up. There were two groups of people in front of him. In the middle was a 2-meter-long blood-eyed wolf. The one fighting with the blood-eyed wolf was a skinny teenager. Lin Xian knew this teenager. It was Luo Yi, the one who helped him answer his questions. Luo Yi held a short sword and kept stabbing at the blood-eyed wolf. On average, 1 out of 3 stabs would hit the blood-eyed wolf. The blood-eyed wolf bared its teeth and waved its sharp claws, leaving streaks of cold light in the air. Lin Xian watched nervously, but soon he was surprised to find that Luo Yi's movement technique was somewhat unique. Chapter 9. Luo Yi kept flashing and dodging the sharp claws of the blood-eyed wolf. Luo Yi's range of movement was very small, almost all within 1 step. He used this small range and high frequency of movement to quickly dodge the attacks of the blood-eyed wolf. What precise control! Lin Xian was secretly amazed. Up until now, Luo Yi had not made a mistake. He was almost sticking close to the blood-eyed wolf. This kind of footwork was very efficient, but it was also very dangerous. One mistake, and he could be seriously injured. Lin Xian thought until here. With a slash sound, Luo Yi's clothes were cut open and 3 bloody marks immediately appeared on his chest. Humph! Great waves! Luo Yi snorted, and his swordsmanship suddenly changed. It was like a surging river, surging endlessly. The 3-foot-long sword was wrapped in ocean blue spiritual energy. Every swing of the sword was like a wave. Luo Yi swung his sword 3 times consecutively. The blue spiritual energy surged in the air, and the violent power swept out. The blood-eyed wolf seemed to have sensed danger. Its fur stood up, and it pounced to the side. Bang! However, the blood-eyed wolf was still 1 step too slow. It was cut in half by the sharp long sword, and blood splattered on the ground. Brother Luo Yi's swordsmanship is great. Someone in the team cheered. I think the footwork is even better. Someone said enviously, Brother Yi, your footwork just now was too cool. Luo Yi looked at the members of the combat team behind him and said, Okay, tidy up the wolf corpses. Let's go and complete the next mission. Lin Xian squatted in the grass and recalled the footwork just now. It was not a special martial skill. It was a footwork that was practiced to a very high level. Coupled with precise calculations, it was the result of the scene just now. So exquisite. I like it. Lin Xian was very moved and planned to work hard in this area. Let's find the shadow travel grass first. He did not forget the purpose of coming out. After tidying up his backpack, he set off again. Finally, Lin Xian found 3 stalks of shadow travel grass in a mountain stream. Lin Xian was overjoyed. He immediately took out a wooden box from his backpack and picked 1 stalk of shadow travel grass and put it in the wooden box. It's in elemental grass. Suddenly, someone behind him exclaimed. Lin Xian's heart sank. He plucked another stalk and placed it into the wooden box before putting it away. He left 1 stalk outside. 2 stalks were enough for him. Brat, put down the Yin elemental grass in your box. That person berated. Lin Xian frowned and looked over, only to see a square-faced youth standing in front of him. He was dressed in white robes with a crescent moon embroidered on his sleeves. People from the Shunwei group. Lin Xian raised his eyebrows and slowly exhaled. There's another one over there. You can go and pick it, Lin Xian said in a deep voice. One stalk. The youth sneered. I want all of it. You dare to snatch the divine might group's mission? You must be tired of living. Sure enough, you're more domineering than I imagined. Lin Xian gripped the long sword in his hand and said coldly, Get out of the way. I don't have time for you. Oh, my. You want to fight? That disciple's expression was insolent. You dare to fight against the people of the divine might group. Come, come. I'll let you know the power of this young master. The square-faced disciple pulled out his long sword and thrust it over. Cloud water sword technique. Although that square-faced disciple was insolent, his attacks were not careless. The moment he attacked, he used a swift and fierce sword technique. He did not have the slightest intention of underestimating Lin Xian. This sword technique was like drifting clouds, but also like flowing water. It gave people the feeling that it was very gentle, like a lover's hand brushing past, causing people to be addicted. Lin Xian was vigilant. Sure enough, those who could join the divine might group all had some skills. His hands did not have a trace of panic, and were very steady. It was as if these were not the hands of a youth, because no youth's hands could be so steady. Lin Xian knew that this was all thanks to the sword technique that he had been practicing for 3 years, which was the heavenly meteor. Otherwise, he would not be able to fight to this extent. Raising his hand, he drew his sword. Lin Xian used the basic sword technique. There were no unnecessary fanciful moves. It was very simple and very practical. Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. The square-faced disciple laughed. You actually used the basic sword technique. If you don't have the ability to challenge the divine might group, you must be tired of living. The rules of the Xianjian sect were strict. No one was allowed to die within the sect, but outside of the Xianjian sect, in this mountain, no one could control them, and no one would. 13 sort of cloud water, light cloud, clear water. The square-faced disciple slashed out 2 times in a row. One was as dazzling as a rainbow, while the other was ethereal. Ordinary people would not be able to detect it. However, this hidden second sword was the real killing move. The square-faced disciple had a smile on his face, as if he could already see Lin Xian powerlessly lying on the ground, begging for mercy. However, in the next moment, the situation changed. The black iron sword in Lin Xian's hand was like a black venomous dragon, as it quickly stabbed out twice. The angles of the 2 stabs were very precise. The square-faced disciple's attack was neutralized. What? That's impossible. The square-faced disciple's eyelids twitched. The 2 swords just now were the essence of the cloud water sword. One sword was in the light, attracting the enemy's firepower, while the other sword was in the dark, specializing in sneak attacks. However, Lin Xian seemed to have known beforehand and easily broke through the 2 swords. Dog shit luck. The square-faced disciple could not figure it out, so he could only attribute it to luck. Let's see how long your luck can last. His face was sinister as he waved his sword, cutting down the surrounding rocks and vegetation. Lin Xian was not in a hurry. The square-faced disciple's strength was on par with him, and his sword technique was not bad. He had only practiced the basic sword technique and basic footwork alone, and had never used it in a fight. Now was the time to try it out. Unconsciously, Lin Xian thought of Luo Yi's footwork not long ago. It was agile, fast, efficient, and exciting. Let's try it. Lin Xian suddenly stepped forward, preparing to practice that footwork. This action frightened the square-faced disciple, but when he found that Lin Xian's attack frequency had decreased, and his footwork was constantly wrong, his face was full of a sinister smile. Out of strength, you've used up all your energy. Then die for me. On the tip of the sword, a silver sword light flashed, and a shocking power surged out. Lin Xian sighed. He had just gotten a feel for it, and now the square-faced disciple wanted to use a big move. Helpless, he could only give up on practicing. He waved his sword, bringing a sword light, and like lightning, it pierced the square-faced disciple's wrist. A cold light flashed, and a half-foot-long wound appeared on the square-faced disciple's wrist, with blood wildly flowing out. With a clang, the sword fell to the ground. The square-faced disciple held his wrist, looking at Lin Xian in horror. What do you want to do?" The square-faced disciple was flustered. "I'm warning you. I'm from the Godly Might group. Don't mess around." Lin Xian was too lazy to pay attention to him. He turned around, picked up the remaining shadow elemental grass, put it in a box, and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, the square-faced disciple quickly climbed up from the ground and quickly retreated. After reaching a safe distance, he shot a small golden arrow into the sky. With a boom, the small arrow exploded in the air, forming a small golden sun, which was very eye-catching. "Brat, you dare to bully the Godly Might group? You're dead." The square-faced disciple roared with a sinister expression. Chapter 10. "Brat, you're dead." The square-faced disciple shouted crazily. From afar, a few figures were rushing over. Their bodies were flickering with light, and they weren't any weaker than Lin Xian. Although Lin Xian wasn't afraid of trouble, he wasn't stupid enough to go against the entire Divine Might group, who knew how many of their people were in the mountains. It wasn't the right time to clash with them. His body flashed, and he was about to run away. A cold light blocked his path. It was the square-faced disciple who was trying his best to stop him. Seeing that his companions had arrived, he naturally wouldn't let Lin Xian go. Scram! The sword in Lin Xian's hand flashed like a rainbow. The square-faced disciple screamed as his body flew out. However, this delay gave the members of the Shunwei group quite a bit of time. 3 figures arrived first and blocked Lin Xian's path. "You dare to hurt the Divine Might group's people? You're simply courting death." The person in front had a strong aura. His body was shining brightly. He was actually a 4th-rank spiritual knight. The other person's cultivation wasn't weak either. He was a 3rd-rank spiritual knight. "Lin Xian, it's actually you?" A 3rd-rank spiritual knight was shocked. He then laughed loudly. "Since you've met me, you can die peacefully." This 3rd-rank spiritual knight was actually Zhang Bin. When he saw Lin Xian, his eyes turned red. He couldn't wait to kill Lin Xian. "Brother Hai, this brat is the sword slave I told you about. You must not let him go," Zhang Bin said to the 4th-rank spiritual knight. "Don't worry, our people are rushing over here. Even if it's a deity, they won't be able to save him." The disciple called Brother Hai sneered. Lin Xian's heart sank. Since the other party wanted to capture him, he wouldn't be lenient. Instead of sitting and waiting for death, he might as well make the first move. He looked at the surrounding terrain and had an idea. He suddenly jumped up. The black iron sword in his hand turned into a shooting star and flashed past. Puchi! Everything happened too suddenly. There was no sign beforehand. Lin Xian was like lightning. He was extremely fast. That 4th-tier spiritual knight called Big Brother Hai wanted to dodge, but it was too late. He could only avoid his vital parts in a hurry. The long sword slashed across his chest, bringing along a piece of flesh and blood. Lin Xian let out a blood-curdling scream as he broke through the encirclement. He stepped on a tree and leaped onto a boulder before fleeing into the distance. "Chase after him." The stage 4 disciple screamed. He wrapped his wound with his spirit energy, then took out a red pill and swallowed it. "We can't let him get away. Observe his route clearly and send out the signal. There's only one outcome for those who provoke the Divine Might group." The 3 of them chased after Lin Xian. When Zhang Bin saw that Lin Xian was getting stronger each time, There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to kill Lin Xian. Otherwise, he would be the unlucky one in the future. Humph, put in more effort. This brat's movement technique level is low, and his speed isn't very fast. Even if we have to chase him, we have to chase him to death. The stage for spiritual night covered his wound with an ominous glint in his eyes. Lin Xian's speed was indeed not fast. After all, he was using the fundamental movement technique. To be able to use the fundamental movement technique to display this kind of speed was already very shocking. However, he was still caught up. That stage for disciple, called Big Brother, Hai was like a hungry wolf. He used his strongest move right from the start. He couldn't wait to split Lin Xian into two halves. Zhang Bin and the other stage 3 spiritual knight also used all their ruthless moves to attack Lin Xian's vital parts. That move, Meteor Flight, almost consumed a third of Lin Xian's spirit energy. At that time, he didn't want to kill anyone. He only wanted to make that stage for disciple lose his ability to fight. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. If he really killed someone, then the Divine Might group would definitely go crazy for revenge. Not for these few lives, but for their reputation. The Divine Might group wouldn't let Lin Xian go. They might even alert the inner disciples. This wasn't what Lin Xian wanted. His goal was to become a core disciple and then return to his family. If he were to fight with the Divine Might group now, he wouldn't be able to afford it. The long sword in Lin Xian's hand flickered with spiritual light. It was like a heavenly sword as it cut through the void. The three of them were forced to retreat. They didn't think that Lin Xian's swordsmanship would be so powerful. It was obviously the most basic swordsmanship, but it could always restrain them. The more Zhang Bin fought, the more afraid he became. In the end, he clenched his teeth and took out a piece of talisman paper. He poured in his spirit energy and then threw it at Lin Xian. That talisman paper fluttered in the wind and continuously grew bigger. Moreover, it emitted a terrifying energy fluctuation. Lin Xian was instinctively shocked. The spirit energy fluctuation on that talisman paper made his heart tremble. He was afraid that even a stage 5 spiritual knight wouldn't have this kind of power. Whoosh! The talisman paper flickered continuously. In the dazzling light, 3 half-meter-long silver light swords pierced towards Lin Xian's vital points like 3 silver dragons. The terrifying spirit energy caused the surroundings to tremble. Rumbling sounds could be heard in the air. Lin Xian executed his basic footwork to the extreme and constantly changed his position. He circulated his spirit energy with all his might. The green spirit energy was like a flame jumping around outside his body. However, the 3 silver light swords were too fast. They were like lightning. Although Lin Xian tried his best to dodge, the sword radiance still brushed past his body. He was sent flying like a fallen leaf. The 3 silver light swords smashed into the ground, creating a pitch-black pit. Many trees were cut in half. Pooh! Lin Xian was only hit by the sword radiance. However, he felt as if he was hit by a heavenly hammer. The blood in his body was in turmoil. He suffered a serious internal injury. He's injured. Everyone, attack. When Zhang Bin saw that his life-saving talisman paper didn't kill Lin Xian, he was furious. He could only urge his companions to attack. Lin Xian's situation was very dangerous. The 3 people in front of him were aggressive. They pounced on him like fierce beasts. He crazily circulated the longevity secret art. The spirit energy in his body was like a river. It constantly circulated in his body, repairing his injured body. After swallowing a pill, Lin Xian's body rose from the ground. He left behind afterimages in the air as he ran into the distance. The 3 people chased closely behind him. Along the way, they alarmed many wild beasts. However, the 3 of them couldn't care less. They only felt anger in their hearts. If they didn't kill Lin Xian, they would go crazy. Kid, die. The three people madly pounced on him. Lin Xian raised his sword to block. Suddenly, he felt a tremor in his body. A black lotus appeared on the tip of his sword, mysterious and demonic. This black lotus was like a bloodthirsty demon. In an instant, it sucked away all the blood and flesh of the rank 4 disciple. Only a piece of human skin was left behind. Zhang Bin and the other disciple were so scared that their eyeballs almost popped out. The two of them trembled and retreated. You are a demon. Whoosh! Lin Xian seemed to be unable to control himself. His long sword once again pierced towards the rank 3 spiritual knight. Very quickly, that person was sucked dry. Clang! Zhang Bin was so scared that his long sword fell to the ground. He kept retreating. When he saw Lin Xian raise his long sword again, he knelt on the ground with a plop. Don't kill me. Zhang Bin kept kowtowing. His whole body was trembling. He didn't expect Lin Xian to be so demonic. He could actually suck people's blood essence. If he knew, even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't have provoked Lin Xian. I found out his secret. He will definitely kill me. Zhang Bin kept thinking, first, I'll beg for mercy. Then, I'll attack him. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but secretly touch the other talisman paper. Big brother, uncle, don't kill me. Zhang Bin kept begging for mercy. No, you are my grandfather. You should treat me as your grandson. Let me go. Lin Xian was trying his best to suppress the bloodthirsty impulse in his body. He didn't know what happened, but he was very familiar with the Black Lotus. It was the Black Lotus that sealed his spiritual vein. He only wanted to kill now. If it wasn't for the art of long life, he would have already collapsed. There were two forces fighting in his body. One was the green spiritual energy formed by the art of long life. The other was the black gas formed by the Black Lotus. These two forces were in a deadlock. No one could do anything to the other. Zhang Bin noticed that Lin Xian was stunned. His eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. He quickly took out the talisman paper and threw it towards Lin Xian. Go to hell! Zhang Bin went crazy. Boom! The talisman paper flashed. A ball of light that was more dazzling than the sun flew out. In a flash, it arrived in front of Lin Xian. Lin Xian's body seemed to have turned into a black hole. In an instant, the ball of light was sucked in. Then, the mysterious small sword in his body trembled. The green spiritual energy shook and quickly suppressed the Black Lotus. Lin Xian also regained his consciousness. He decisively stabbed Zhang Bin's throat. Zhang Bin clutched his throat. His eyes gradually widened. My big brother is... Before he could finish his words, he collapsed. Chapter 11. Lin Xian had no qualms about it. If he didn't kill, he would be killed. Furthermore, he had the strange phenomenon of devouring other people's blood essence. If word got out, he would definitely be hunted down. Wolf howls could be heard from all directions. The fight just now had already attracted countless monsters. Now that blood was all over the ground, these ferocious beasts were even more agitated. Lin Xian's body wasn't in a good condition. He quickly retreated, thinking that Zhang Bin's body would be eaten. That way, it would be difficult to find out that he was the killer. With a few shuttles, he disappeared into the forest. Not long after Lin Xian left, the hungry wolves pounced on Zhang Bin and the others' corpses. By the time Lin Xian returned to the sect, it was already evening. The sun was setting in the west, and its afterglow spread across the land. He dragged his tired body back to his room and fell asleep on the bed. When he woke up again, the silver moon was already in the sky. Lin Xian carefully checked the condition of his body. The small glazed sword was still suspended there. The green spiritual power flowed slowly. Wherever it passed, there was a faint glow. The black gas and black lotus that appeared during the day were nowhere to be seen. What the hell? Lin Xian rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. The scene of a person's blood essence being sucked dry was too shocking. A living person was sucked dry in an instant. This kind of thing had never happened before. There had been too many strange things happening recently. What's in my body? Why did Father let me enter the ancestral land? Lin Xian had many questions in his mind. Little kid, your swordsmanship is not bad. At this moment, a voice entered Lin Xian's ears. Lin Xian's muscles tensed up. He looked around cautiously. The long sword in his hand was ready to strike at any time, but there was no one around. Come out quickly, or I'll get angry. Stop looking. I'm here, the voice said lazily. Then Lin Xian felt the world spin. Then the small wooden house in front of him disappeared. It was replaced by a grayish-white land. There was a huge divine tree in front of him, but it had already withered. Under the tree, there was a figure with black hair like a waterfall and white clothes fluttering in the wind. The figure's back was facing Lin Xian, so he couldn't see his face clearly. Who are you? Where is this place? Lin Xian calmed the fear in his heart and asked in a deep voice, Hee kid, not bad. You didn't wet your pants from fright. The white figure turned around when he heard Lin Xian's words. This was a middle-aged man. He could be considered handsome, but the stubble on his face and the red wine gourd in his hand ruined his image of a transcendent being. It's been a long time since I've met someone. I feel really close to you. The middle-aged man in white shook the gourd in his hand and said, Who are you? Why did you bring me here? Lin Xian asked warily. Kid, don't be so nervous. It doesn't matter who I am. You just need to know that I won't hurt you. As for this place, it's in your body. What? In my body? Lin Xian almost cried out. Then he seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Could it be that mysterious little sword? The middle-aged man in white raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine from the gourd. He smiled but didn't say anything. What's with the lotus in my body? And what's this sword? Lin Xian asked. The middle-aged man in white smiled and said, Kid, you have so many questions. You'll find out about these things in the future. It's pointless to tell you now. Then, what's with the blood-sucking? You didn't suck it, did you? Lin Xian thought of that frightening scene again. There's still a force in your body, but it's hidden very well. This force really stimulated me and woke me up from my deep sleep. As for what it is, I'm not sure. The middle-aged man in white had a rare, serious expression. However, he soon returned to his lazy look and said, Don't worry. With me around, that force won't dare to come out. Lin Xian knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of the middle-aged man, so he stopped asking. However, he couldn't let this guy stay in his body forever. He had to find a way to get him out. Hey, don't tell me you're going to stay here forever. My stomach isn't an inn. The middle-aged man in white smiled and asked in a tempting voice, Do you want to become an inner disciple? Do you want to return to your family? Do you want to become stronger? The middle-aged man in white's voice seemed to be filled with magic, causing Lin Xian's heart to beat rapidly. Without the black lotus sealing my meridians, wouldn't it be easy for me to become stronger with my talent? Lin Xian was confident in himself. Your talent is good, but don't you think about how many years you're behind others? What kind of resources can you get now? Do you have the time to waste? You have a way. Lin Xian's face was gloomy. The Sword Pool Mansion opened the ancestors' land once every 10 years. There were less than 2 years until the next opening. If he wanted to enter the ancestors' land, he had to be in the top 3 of the younger generation. Before he left the family, some of the young disciples in the family had already reached the spiritual sea realm. He was only at the 3rd level of the meridian condensing stage. The gap between the two was like a moat that was difficult to cross. Seeing Lin Xian's dispirited face, the middle-aged man in white laughed. What do you think of the longevity secret? You're the one who gave me that cultivation method. Lin Xian finally remembered the art of longevity. Without the longevity secret, how could you break through to the third level of the meridian condensing stage so quickly? The middle-aged man in white said, "Now, you believe in my strength. What do you want from helping me like this?" Lin Xian asked cautiously. He knew that there was no such thing as a free thing in the world. "My request is simple. When your strength reaches a certain level, I'll tell you." The middle-aged man in white looked into the distance, his eyes full of vicissitudes. "Okay, deal." Lin Xian didn't think there was a problem. "Hurry up and let me reach the spiritual sea realm," he said lightly. "Pooh." The middle-aged man in white spat out all the wine he had just drunk. "I really want to kill you with a mouthful of strong wine. What do you think cultivation is? You want to reach the heavens in a single step? Dream on. AI, what a waste of a mouthful of good wine." The middle-aged man in white sighed. Lin Xian covered his face in pain. No matter how he looked at it, this guy looked like a drunkard. He felt like he had been tricked. "Just call me Lord Wine in the future. I'll brew some low-grade spirit wine for you first, so that your meridians won't be able to take it." "Brew wine? You want me to drink wine to break through?" Lin Xian felt like he was going crazy. What's with that expression? Lord Wine was unhappy. "Back in the day, many powerful experts begged me to brew wine for them. You should be content to be able to drink my wine." He didn't care if Lin Xian believed him or not. He said directly, 3 snake-shaped fruits and a purple flower herb. "Give it to me tomorrow, and I'll brew wine for you." "What? 3 snake-shaped fruits and a purple flower herb? You want me to rob them?" Lin Xian roared. He had seen in the mission hall that 1 serpent-shaped fruit cost 50 contribution points. He did not have many contribution points in total, and he was afraid that he would not be able to exchange for such an item even if he had enough contribution points. "If you can't get it, then there's nothing I can do. After all, I'm not the one in a hurry to level up." Lord Wine yawned and waved his sleeves, creating a gust of wind that sent Lin Xian flying. Chapter 12. Lin Xian felt a wave of dizziness. When he regained his senses, he found himself back in the hut. After cursing under his breath, he took out the 3 stalks of Yin elemental grass that he had plucked. He crushed one of them with his spirit energy and extracted the liquid within. Following that, he took out the damaged, human-ranked, treasured artifact. After dripping the Yin elemental grasses liquid onto the human-ranked treasured artifact, Lin Xian used his blood to form a strange rune. Immediately, the brown substance melted and dripped to the ground, burning small holes in the ground. Finally, there were no more contaminants on the human-ranked treasured artifact. Lin Xian drew 3 runes on the sword, drawing in the spirit energy in the air to cleanse the sword. Your technique isn't bad, but it's still a little immature." Lord Alcohol's voice sounded in Lin Xian's mind. "You know how to nurture artifacts." Lin Xian curled his lips. "Of course. Back in the day, I was known as a dual master. One was the wine master, and the other was the sword master. There's nothing related to the sword that I don't know. Cultivating the sword is just too easy." "Sword master." Lin Xian's eyes lit up. "Since you say it's so powerful, give me a high-grade sword technique to practice. The level of my sword techniques is too high. You won't be able to cultivate them now. Let's talk about it after you break through to the spirit sea realm." After saying that, Lord Alcohol fell silent. Lin Xian gritted his teeth, but no matter how he shouted, there was no response. At that moment, the flickering runes also disappeared. On the sword's body, there was a faint glow. Even from afar, one could feel the coldness coming from it. As expected of a treasured artifact, it's so powerful without using any spirit energy. Lin Xian felt the bone-piercing coldness coming from the sword and was filled with admiration. Treasured artifacts were weapons that surpassed ordinary sabers and swords. They were inscribed with special runes. When a warrior injected spirit energy into them, they could erupt with power that exceeded their own strength. Every treasured artifact was extremely precious. They were painstakingly forged by blacksmiths. Every warrior dreamed of owning a treasured artifact. Putting away the repaired artifact, Lin Xian couldn't help but feel a little excited. After submitting the mission tomorrow, he would have 100 contribution points. In addition to the previous mission, he would have a total of 130 contribution points and 70 low-grade spirit stones. 100 contribution points were enough to exchange for a low-grade yellow-class martial art, and low-grade spirit stones could also be used to purchase items or directly absorb the spirit energy within. However, the spirit energy within low-grade spirit stones was rather impure and needed to be purified by oneself. The next morning, Lin Xian carried the long wooden box and went straight to the Hall of Missions. Bang! He put the wooden box in front of the registration disciple and said with a smile, "Senior brother, check the goods." The registration disciple glanced at Lin Xian doubtfully and then quickly opened the long wooden box. The 3-foot-long blade glowed with a dim light and emitted a bone-piercing chill, as if it could explode with a powerful force at any time. The registration disciple took a deep breath and swallowed hard. "That's right. It's really repaired," the registration disciple said with a shocked face. "Junior brother is really amazing." When he asked Lin Xian to accept this mission, he only wanted to give it a try. He didn't have much hope, but Lin Xian actually repaired it. The registration disciple quickly gave the reward to Lin Xian and then put away the treasured artifact. Lin Xian took out 20 spirit stones from the pile and distributed them to the disciples who had registered. "Senior brother, I'll need you to take care of me in the future. If there are any more missions to repair weapons, please help me keep them," Lin Xian said with a smile. The registration disciple quietly put away the spirit stones and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Junior brother Lin. My name is Chun Dajing. If you need any help, just let me know." "Senior brother, I wonder if there are any serpentine fruit and violet flower lichen here?" Lin Xian asked. Chun Dajing flipped open the records and looked. "No, all the stock has been taken away by the inner sect elders." Lin Xian nodded. He wasn't surprised. The serpentine fruit and violet flower lichen were both ingredients for alchemy. They were very precious, so it was normal for them to be out of stock. "Senior brother Chen, I want to exchange for a low-grade yellow-ranked martial art. Do you have any suggestions?" Lin Xian decided to learn swordsmanship, first to increase his strength. Chen Dajing lowered his head and took out a yellowed book from a pile of materials and handed it to Lin Xian. "This is the name of the martial art that can be exchanged and a brief introduction. Take a look first." Then he took out a small booklet and said in a low voice, "This is the record of the martial art that the other disciples exchanged for." Lin Xian first opened the booklet that introduced the martial art. There were all kinds of martial art names, introductions, and basic information such as the required contribution points. He casually flipped through a few pages and found that the first few pages were all yellow-ranked martial arts. The last few pages even had mystic-ranked martial arts. In Lin Xian's knowledge, mystic-ranked martial arts were very powerful. Even in his family, mystic-ranked martial arts were rare. But in the Black Heaven sect, he could actually exchange for mystic-ranked martial arts. But when he saw the required contribution points, he couldn't help but bitterly laugh. The price was ridiculously high. An ordinary disciple wouldn't be able to afford it in their lifetime. Lin Xian shook his head and no longer paid attention to it. He turned his attention back to the martial arts in front of him. According to Lin Xian's thoughts, He didn't need the martial arts to cultivate his spirit power. If it was a combination of movement and attack, Lin Xian's first choice would be the offensive martial arts. As the saying goes, offense is the best defense. A strong offensive style would allow Lin Xian to complete his mission more easily. Thinking of this, he turned his attention to the offensive martial arts, Tiger Subduing Fist. The fist style is fierce and focuses on using strength to suppress others. Grade: low-grade yellow ranked martial art. Contribution points required: 100 contribution points. Wind-flowing steps: graceful footwork that moves with the wind. Grade: low-grade yellow ranked martial art. Contribution points required: 120 contribution points. Flowing cloud sword art. Sword art's characteristics are ethereal and agile, making it difficult for others to grasp its trajectory. Grade: low-grade yellow-ranked martial art. Contribution points required: 120 contribution points. Lin Xian quickly browsed through it before his gaze finally stopped at a spot. Lightning Eclipse Sword Art. Sword art's characteristics are as fast as lightning and as fast as thunder. Grade: high-grade yellow-ranked martial art. Contribution points required: 120 contribution points. Also, only the first 3 ranks are included in this book. Please choose carefully. I see. The sword art is incomplete. No wonder the price is so low, Lin Xian thought. However, the characteristics of the Lightning Eclipse sword art are really tempting. I never expected to see the Lightning Eclipse sword art here. Lord Alcohol's voice sounded in Lin Xian's mind. Holy sh*T, can you not be so sudden? Lin Xian also used his thoughts to communicate, but Lord Alcohol's voice gave him a fright. Ha ha! Lord Alcohol laughed dryly and hurriedly changed the topic. Don't you want to learn sword art? This Lightning Eclipse sword art is definitely a good choice. From your tone, it sounds like you have seen the Lightning Eclipse sword art before. Lin Xian was curious. Of course, back in the day, the Lightning Eclipse sword art was considered one of the godly techniques. This book is obviously a simplified version, but it is very suitable for you now. If you dare scam me, I won't let you off. Lin Xian decided to believe Lord Alcohol this time. Chapter 13. Senior Brother Chen, I've read through it. I want to exchange for this thunderclap sword technique. Lin Xian returned the book. What? You want exchange for the thunderclap sword technique? Chen Dajing exclaimed. When the nearby disciples heard this, they looked at Lin Xian with an inexplicable gaze. Junior brother, you're new here, so you don't know much about the thunderclap sword technique? Chen Dajing explained. Not only is this sword technique incomplete, but it's also very difficult to master. There were people who chose it in the past, but no one succeeded. As time passed, no one chose it anymore. So, junior brother, you should exchange for something else. After all, 120 contribution points isn't a small amount. Chen Dajing advised. No one succeeded? That's weird. Lin Xian rubbed his chin and smiled. Although Lord Alcohol said that this is a simplified version, I think it's quite powerful. Don't worry, senior brother. I'll exchange for this thunderclap sword technique. Sigh. Chen Dajing sighed and shook his head at Lin Xian's insistence. He took out a thin booklet from the bookshelf behind him and handed it to Lin Xian. You know the rules, right? Chen Dajing asked. Lin Xian nodded. Other than me, no one else is allowed to pass it on. This was the rule of the Black Heaven sect. Whoever exchanged for the technique would be allowed to cultivate it. If anyone were to privately pass it on, they would be severely punished by the sect. Lin Xian took the thunderclap sword technique and was about to leave when a group of disciples came in from outside. They kept talking and looked flustered. Have you heard? Someone from the Shun Wei group died in the Taihang Mountains. What? Are you sure? Someone asked, "You still don't know?" The few disciples who came in said, "Yesterday, a few disciples from the Xunwei group didn't return home the entire night. Their bodies were found in the Taihang Mountains today. They were already gnawed beyond recognition. If not for their identity tokens, we wouldn't have recognized them. They were killed by demonic beasts." The disciples who had gathered around said, "It's their bad luck to encounter a powerful demonic beast." When something like this happened, the ones who were most excited were the ordinary outer sect disciples. They were not members of the Divine Might group and had been bullied by the Divine Might group on a daily basis. Naturally, they hoped that something would happen to the Divine Might group. For example, someone would provoke the Divine Might group, or the battle group would fight with the Divine Might group. However, it seemed that he had been excited for nothing. "Do you know who died?" the disciple asked mysteriously. Everyone looked at him curiously, their faces full of anticipation. Lin Xian stood in the distance and remained silent. He knew who had died, but he also wanted to hear the Divine Might group's attitude towards this matter. The disciple continued, "One of the dead disciples is called Zhang Bin. You might not have heard of his name, but you must have heard of his brother's name. His brother is Zhang Qian." "What? Zhang Qian? You said Zhang Qian's younger brother is dead?" Everyone exclaimed. "Who is this Zhang Qian?" When Lin Xian saw Chen Dazhing's shocked expression, he subconsciously pursed his lips. "You entered the sect late, so it's normal that you don't know." Chen Dazhing sighed. Zhang Qian is an inner sect disciple and is considered a core member of the Divine Might group. His cultivation has reached the 8th level of the pulse condensing realm, and he is one of the top 30 inner sect disciples. Almost all the disciples of the Black Heaven sect have heard of his name. I didn't expect his brother to die in the Taiyang Mountains while he was out on a mission. He probably went berserk when he came back. Lin Xian nodded expressionlessly, but his heart sank. He didn't expect Zhang Bin's brother to be so powerful. However, he didn't regret it. Even if he knew Zhang Bin's identity, he would still kill him. At this moment, the disciple continued. Many of the inner sect disciples of the Divine Might group went to the Taihang Mountains and found that Zhang Bin's body had many sword wounds. Among them, there were obvious wounds on his neck that were pierced by a long sword. "You're saying that he was killed first and then dismembered by a beast?" Everyone was stunned. Someone actually dared to kill Zhang Qian's younger brother. This was simply courting death. Now the entire Divine Might group is furious. They are discussing a solution and will probably mobilize all their forces to find the culprit. Lin Xian sighed in his heart. He didn't expect that he would be seen through. He bid farewell to Chen Dazhing and left. His current situation was very dangerous, and the only thing he could do was to raise his strength as much as possible. On the way back, Lin Xian found that all the disciples were discussing this matter. He subconsciously clenched his fist and quickened his pace. Back in his room, Lin Xian relaxed his vigilance. He slowly exhaled. Calming himself down, he opened the thunderclap sword technique that he just exchanged and read it word by word. If he could master this thunderclap sword technique, his strength would increase by a large margin. The core of the thunderclap sword technique was only one word: fast. What was the fastest in the world? Lightning. What was the most violent? Thunder. And the thunderclap sword technique combined the fastest speed and violent power. With one strike, wind and thunder would move. Lin Xian couldn't help but nod his head when he read this. Indeed, the power of lightning was one of the most violent powers in the world. If this power was integrated into the sword technique, the power would be unimaginable. Lin Xian already had a preliminary understanding of the fast sword technique. His heavenly meteor was extremely fast, but unfortunately, it consumed too much spiritual energy. I wonder how fast the thunderclap sword technique is. Lin Xian was filled with anticipation. He continued reading. At the back were the first 3 moves, and a section of the sword technique's mental cultivation method. This sword technique's mental cultivation method was the core of the sword technique. Only with the sword technique's mental cultivation method could the sword technique's power be unleashed. Lin Xian became more and more engrossed as he read. The contents of the thunderclap sword technique had broadened his horizons. He now knew why many people couldn't master it. Just the word fast alone meant that it couldn't be mastered in a short period of time. Just like Lin Xian's heavenly meteor, he had practiced it for 3 years before he could achieve today's results. Furthermore, not only did the thunderclap sword technique have to be fast, but it also had to control the violent power. Are you done reading? Lord Alcohol's voice sounded. Do you want me to give you some pointers? Lin Xian was still not used to this drunkard's unpredictable voice, but when he heard the word guidance, his face was instantly filled with smiles. Since this mysterious fellow dares to call himself Sword Absolute, his attainments in the Sword Tao must be extraordinary. With his pointers, my cultivation speed will definitely increase greatly, Lin Xian thought to himself. Uncle Alcohol, I really need your pointers. Lin Xian said with a grin, according to your character, you should first suspect something before rejecting it, Lord Alcohol said in an eccentric tone. Hee, I'd be a bastard if I didn't take advantage of it. Lord Alcohol laughed out loud when he heard that. Kid, you really suit my temperament. However, he quickly reacted and said unhappily, what did you just say? Who's the alcohol addict? Lin Xian was taken aback, thinking that this fellow was slow to react. However, he praised him. You must have heard wrongly. I said that you are the wine sage and the sword immortal among men. You are the wine sword immortal. Yes, I like what you said. Lord Alcohol felt a sour feeling in his heart as he howled, Xiao Xuanzi, I'm almost out of wine. Get me some good wine. Lin Xian was speechless. I want wine brewed from 1,000-year-old spirit fruit and a 10,000-year-old immortal vine. Lord Alcohol began making requests. You're not awake yet, are you? Lin Xian held his head and said in pain, I don't even have a single spirit stone on me. Where am I going to get you 1,000-year-old spirit fruit? Lord Alcohol's lazy voice floated out. I can't teach you that. Study it yourself. I wish you success. Lin Xian was speechless. After a long while, Lin Xian suddenly exploded. Damn it, I praised you as the wine sword immortal. Do you really think you are an immortal? Do you believe that I won't chase you out right now? The room was silent, and Lord Alcohol didn't react. Fine, I'll go find you a spirit fruit. Lin Xian gritted his teeth. Chapter 14. The boundless Taiyang Mountains were filled with a primitive aura. There were all kinds of tall trees and strange mountains scattered throughout. Tigers roared, and apes cried. Ferocious beasts were everywhere. However, in this steep mountain forest, a skinny figure often appeared and hunted many wild beasts. Damn, I'm so unlucky. The figure pierced a 2-horned boar with a sword and landed steadily on the ground. This beast ate half of the serpent-shaped fruit. The figure was Lin Xian. He angrily cut off the pair of white horns and put them in his bag. He had been in the mountain forest for the past few days to find the serpent-shaped fruit and viola licorice. After a few days of hard work, he had already found 3 serpent-shaped fruits and 4 viola licorice. As long as he gathered 5 of each, he would be able to get Lord Alcohol to brew wine that could increase his cultivation. Just a moment ago, he had finally found a serpent-shaped fruit, but a 2-horned boar had eaten half of it first. In his anger, Lin Xian had no choice but to kill the 2-horned boar. He was still short of 2 serpent-shaped fruits and a viola licorice. He had to hurry. Lin Xian's body swayed as he set off once again. There were only 2 months left before the intersect assessment, but his strength was still at the 3rd stage of the pulse condensation realm. Lin Xian was like a big bird. With a tap of his toes, he glided in the air. When he landed, he used the branches to propel himself into the air. The serpent-shaped fruit liked dark and damp places, while the viola licorice preferred the sun. Therefore, Lin Xian could only run around. Whoosh! He landed on the trunk of a big tree and scanned his surroundings. Indeed, he found the serpent-shaped fruit in a dark place. It had to be said that Lin Xian's luck was pretty good. Although the serpent-shaped fruit was not very precious, it was not commonly seen. In addition, the elders of the Black Heaven sect used a lot of it. Therefore, the serpent-shaped fruit in the vicinity was almost all plucked. Lin Xian stomped his feet and flew towards the serpent-shaped fruit. Before he landed, there was a sudden change in the grass. A 2-tailed green snake shot up like a sharp sword. The snake's mouth formed a fan shape and bit towards Lin Xian's head. "You're courting death," Lin Xian roared angrily as he thrust his black iron longsword diagonally. It was as fast as lightning, and it pierced right into the man's weak spot. With a flip of his wrist, the spiritual energy poured into the sword and tore the wound open as if an explosion had happened. After killing the twin-tailed green snake, Lin Xian quickly grabbed the snake-shaped fruit, of course Lin Xian's. He madly channeled the art of longevity, and his entire palm glowed with a green light like a bright moon. Xian, 2 sharp sounds were heard. There were 2 finger-sized snakes hidden under the leaves of the snake-shaped fruit. They bit Lin Xian's palm the moment it touched the fruit. Fortunately, Lin Xian's reaction was fast enough. Otherwise, he would have definitely been bitten. Although this kind of snake was small in size, it was extremely poisonous. Generally, if a person below the 6th level of the meridian period was bitten by it, even if they didn't die, they would be crippled. Lin Xian directly used his strength to kill the 2 small snakes. Then, he plucked the snake-shaped fruit. Finally, he also took out the snake-shaped fruit and put it into his backpack. No matter what, these materials can still be sold for some spiritual stones. However, my backpack is almost full. I can't fit them all in. Lin Xian looked at the remaining materials, his eyes filled with reluctance. Those were all spiritual stones. "You bumpkin! You can't even bear to part with such a small thing." Lord Alcohol's mocking voice rang out. "Uncle Drunkard, didn't we agree to greet each other before speaking?" Lin Xian was going crazy. He was actually being looked down upon by a drunkard. "Well, I haven't thought of how to greet him yet. It's not like I can knock on the door." Lord Alcohol rolled his eyes. "You're still too young. Someone like me can completely adapt to the days in your body." F***CK. Lin Xian wished he could dive in and beat him up, but for the sake of the spirit wine and the cultivation of the thunderous sword art, he endured it. "Xiao Xuanzi, you have to hurry up and find the 1,000-year-old spirit fruit. Otherwise, I, Lord Alcohol, will fall into an eternal slumber." "What?" Lin Xian jumped. This fellow had tricked him of so many things, but he had yet to fulfill his promise. "Uncle, at the very least, the thunderous sword art you taught me is in a slumber." Lin Xian exclaimed, "Little brat, if I could leave this place, I would have taught you a lesson." Lord Alcohol cried out angrily. As Lin Xian bickered with Lord Alcohol, he searched for the remaining materials. Under Lord Alcohol's guidance, Lin Xian quickly found 5 snake-shaped fruits and 5 purple flower lichens. "Uncle, don't tell me you're a transformed demon beast? Why is your nose so sharp?" Lin Xian said in delight. Lord Alcohol, "Uncle, why don't you collect more?" Lin Xian continued. 5 fruits can make more. Is that enough? If you continue, I won't make more." Lord Alcohol threatened. The 5 snake-shaped fruits and 5 purple flower lichens were collected by Lord Alcohol. All Lin Xian could do was wait patiently. According to Lord Alcohol, he had to be at least at the 4th stage of the meridian's condensation period before he could begin cultivating the thunderous sword art. Otherwise, his body would not be able to control the force. Phew! A shadow suddenly appeared in the sky, as though the sky had been covered. Lin Xian looked up and realized that it was pitch black above him. Violent air currents surged out from above and swept in all directions. Rows of trees were swept up into the sky, and table-sized boulders were sent flying everywhere. Lin Xian was enveloped by the strange wind. It was too late for him to escape. All he could do was crazily circulate his spirit energy and rely on his own strength to resist the storm. The wind was like a steel blade, slicing through his body as though it was cutting him. Lin Xian's feet were deeply rooted into the ground as he placed his hands in front of his chest to protect himself from the wind. Thankfully, the wind left as quickly as it came. Soon, the shadow in the sky moved forward along with the wind. Lin Xian was finally out of danger. He looked up in horror and realized that the shadow was a gigantic bird that covered the sky. The gigantic bird spread its wings and formed 2 hurricanes under its wings, wantonly destroying the forest below. Damn it, what rank is this demonic beast? It's so big. Lin Xian said with lingering fear, "When can I cover the sky with one hand and move mountains and fill the sea?" Lin Xian yearned to become an expert. As a warrior, there was no one who did not want to stand at the peak of martial arts. Lin Xian yearned to become stronger because he wanted to control his own destiny. After desperately circulating his mystic arts, the 4th spirit meridian in his body had loosened. In a few days, he would definitely be able to open the 4th spirit meridian and become a stage for spiritual night. At that moment, Lord Alcohol's voice sounded again. "All right, Xiao Xuanzi, with my spirit wine, I guarantee you a speedy breakthrough. However, remember to find me a spirit fruit. I just woke up not long ago, and I don't want to fall asleep again." Lord Alcohol's voice gradually became softer. "Don't drink too much. You can only drink 1 mouthful at a time. It looks like this fellow's situation isn't good. Forget it. I'll find him a spirit fruit after I break through." Lin Xian had an idea. Without any hesitation, he found a nearby cave and entered. Lin Xian held a small purple gourd in his hand. Inside was the spirit wine brewed by Lord Alcohol. He opened the lid and took a sip. The spirit wine was very sweet as it flowed down his throat into his stomach. The next moment, a warm flow was produced in Lin Xian's body. Chapter 15. The heat wave was like a flood that quickly stirred up the spirit power in Lin Xian's body. In addition, Lin Xian circulated the longevity art over and over again, causing the green spirit power in his body to grow stronger. Under the guidance of the longevity art, the green spirit power quickly broke through the 4th spirit meridian and formed a 4th cycle in Lin Xian's body. Feeling the surge of spirit power, Lin Xian's lips curled up slightly. He originally needed 4 or 5 days to break through the bottleneck, but with the help of the spirit wine, he had broken through. "My current strength has at least doubled compared to the 3rd stage of the meridian condensation period. No wonder it's said that martial arts cultivation is like climbing a ladder. One stage can crush another." Lin Xian punched out, creating a huge crater in the mountain wall. Cracks spread out like a spider web. As expected, I still can't control my strength accurately. Lin Xian knew that if he could control his strength well, he would be able to concentrate all his strength on a single point. That way, he would be able to directly penetrate the mountain wall, unlike now where his strength was scattered and could only shatter the mountain rocks. However, he wasn't discouraged. As long as he learned the thunderclap sword technique, he would be able to control his strength accurately. That way, his strength would increase again. However, if he wanted Lord Alcohol to teach him the sword technique, he would need to find a spirit fruit. Lin Xian didn't dare to think about 1,000-year-old spirit fruits, but 100-year-old spirit fruits could be obtained as long as he paid the price. What a waste of a good pot of wine. Lin Xian sighed. Why do I have to imitate the drunkard's words? Lin Xian shuddered. Looks like I'll be led astray by him in the future. He opened his backpack and took out a few white porcelain bottles. Then he poured the remaining spirit wine in the gourd into these white porcelain bottles. He poured half a mouthful into each of the 3 white porcelain bottles, then carefully sealed the bottle caps. Lin Xian put away the purple gourd, then took the white porcelain bottles and a backpack full of beast materials to the nearest city. Liang City was a nearby city. It was close to the Taiyang Mountains and not far from the Black Heaven sect. Many Black Heaven sect disciples came here to buy things. Because it was close to the mountains, there were many mercenary groups that entered the forest for the first time. In addition, the disciples of the Black Heaven sect often visited Liang City, causing the trade in Liang City to flourish. Among them, the most famous ones were the first floor, second lane, and third treasure street. The first floor was referring to the 10,000 Treasures Tower. This 10,000 Treasures Tower could be said to be the largest trading house within Liang City. There were only rare treasures that you could not imagine, but there was nothing that you could not buy. Of course, the premise was that you had to have enough money. If you weren't from a rich family, it was better not to go. Otherwise, just the price alone was enough to scare people to death. The second market had 2 markets, the Heavenly Fragrance Market and the Chengyi Market. Although it was not as famous as the 10,000 Treasures Tower, it was also considered a first-class exchange. The goods inside were not only comprehensive, but the price was also cheaper than the 10,000 Treasures Tower. However, it was also not something that ordinary people could afford. As for the 3 Treasure Street, it was a commercial street. The things sold were naturally related to martial artists. However, the things inside were very complicated. It could be said that they were passing off fish eyes as pearls. Often, people would buy fake goods, but there were also people who found treasures. Therefore, it could be said that this was a place where heaven and hell coexisted. As long as you had enough luck, you might be able to find a heaven-defying treasure. After Lin Xian arrived at Liang City, he bought a loose black robe with a cloak and covered his entire body within the black robe. When going out, it was not good to be careless. He did not have the money to go to the 10,000 Treasures Tower. Just the entrance fee was 30 low-grade spirit stones. Hearing this, Lin Xian's eyes turned red. As for the commercial street, he planned to stroll around when he had the money. As for selling things, forget about it. Therefore, he went straight to the Heavenly Fragrance Market of the second lane. The Heavenly Fragrance Market was located in the south of Liang City and occupied a very large area. The boss behind the Heavenly Fragrance Market was a great beauty. Moreover, she had a group of beautiful ladies under her. These ladies often came to the Heavenly Fragrance Market to do business. Many martial artists came because of its reputation. Lin Xian stood at the entrance of the Heavenly Fragrance Market. Looking at the tide of people, he took a deep breath and then strode in. There were many people like Lin Xian who wore black robes. Therefore, he was not conspicuous in the crowd. Touching the 3 small bottles in his arms, he followed the flow of people and walked forward. The inside was divided into many areas, which led the flow of people very well. Lin Xian was looking for the whereabouts of the spirit fruits while thinking about how much he should sell these spirit wines. Things like these that could stimulate spirit energy. If not for his lack of money, he would not sell them even if he was beaten to death. Weapon area, elixir area, armor area, herb area. Lin Xian looked through them one by one and found quite a few good things. However, the prices only made him chuckle before he turned around and left. Finally, he came to the herb area. There were shops and stalls here. Lin Xian looked at each stall. Some of the stall owners were very friendly and chatted with him. Some of them were very cold and just sat there quietly. After asking around, there were indeed no 1,000-year spirit fruits. There were a few 100-year spirit fruits, but the price was too expensive. Moreover, they did not accept bartering. Lin Xian could only give up and decided to enter the shop to take a look. Hey! Just as Lin Xian was about to enter the shop, a figure pulled him back. I've been watching you for a long time. Do you need a 100-year spirit fruit? It was a fat middle-aged man. His triangular eyes were squeezed into a line by the fat on his face. He grinned and said, I have some here. Do you want to take a look? Lin Xian raised his eyebrows and looked at the fat middle-aged man with a faint smile. Then he said, Take it out and let me take a look. As he got the fat man to take the goods, he called for Lord Alcohol inwardly. Indeed, when Lord Alcohol heard that he was going to identify the spirit fruit, he immediately perked up. At that moment, the fat middle-aged man took out an orange fruit. He shook the spirit fruit and said, A genuine 100-year flame fruit. It only costs 500 spirit stones. A typical stall's spirit fruit was priced between 800 spirit stones to 1,000 spirit stones. The fat middle-aged man was selling it for 500 spirit stones, so it was indeed cheap. However, Lord Alcohol took a glance and determined that it wasn't a 100-year spirit fruit. It wasn't even 10 years old. The fat man was purely a swindler. After learning the truth, Lin Xian sneered and turned to leave. He didn't have the time to waste with the fat man. To his surprise, the fat man grabbed him. Lin Xian was infuriated. He never expected a seller of fake goods to be so arrogant. Just as he was about to teach him a lesson, he never expected the fat middle-aged man to speak first. Men, you're robbing me in broad daylight. Lin Xian was taken aback. He never expected the fat man to frame him. Before he could react, the crowd had already surrounded him. The fat middle-aged man continued shouting, You wanted to buy 100-year spirit fruit. I sold it to you out of goodwill, but you actually snatched it. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? The crowd began to discuss among themselves. Many of them were criticizing Lin Xian. Make way, make way. Who dares to cause trouble in the Heavenly Fragrance Market? The Heavenly Fragrance Market's guards rushed over from afar. Chapter 16. Lord Guard. This fellow dares to steal from the Heavenly Fragrance Market. He's clearly challenging the authority of the Heavenly Fragrance Market. I hope you can uphold justice for me, the middle-aged fatty said with a miserable expression, but his eyes flashed with a crafty glint. The leading guard glanced at Lin Xian. Seeing that he didn't have any powerful spirit energy fluctuations, he sneered. Men, take him down. With that said, he gave the fatty a look. The middle-aged fatty revealed an imperceptible smile. At the same time, 4 Heavenly Fragrance Market guards walked towards Lin Xian with sabers. Sigh. This fellow actually dares to cause trouble in the Heavenly Fragrance Market. I'm afraid he's in for it. He's probably new and doesn't know how powerful the Heavenly Fragrance Market is. Lin Xian looked at the 4 guards walking over and secretly circulated his spirit energy. He never expected to encounter such a situation the moment he entered, but he definitely wasn't one to be taken advantage of. Just as Lin Xian was about to attack, Lord Alcohol's voice sounded in his mind. You are still too young. Are you being impulsive over such a trivial matter? Lin Xian rolled his eyes. How can I not be impulsive when I'm already being bullied? Lord Alcohol smiled mysteriously. Watch me. Lin Xian felt an inexplicable energy surge out of his body and float towards the middle-aged fatty. The next moment, the middle-aged fatty shuddered and laughed maniacally. Ha ha, Brother Leopard, it's going too smoothly this time. This black-robed man is too easy to scam. He didn't even resist. Let's split the items on him equally. When I find another fat sheep, I'll look for you, Brother Leopard." As he spoke, the middle-aged fatty grabbed the leading guard and kept shouting Brother Leopard's name. The surrounding people immediately understood what was going on and glared angrily at the Heavenly Fragrance market guards. The 4 guards who wanted to capture Lin Xian immediately retreated in fear. Brother Leopard was so frightened that his face turned pale. He raised his palm and slapped. "Pa!" The middle-aged fatty spun 3 times on the spot from the slap. His already fat face swelled up even more. This slap completely woke the middle-aged fatty up. "Be Brother Leopard, why did you hit me?" the middle-aged fatty said aggrievedly. "Scram, I don't know you. Men, capture this fatty." Brother Leopard wished he could tear him apart. Now that things had gotten out of hand, the owner of the Heavenly Fragrance Market had been alerted. A beautiful woman wearing a long pink dress slowly walked over. She first sent someone to suppress Brother Bao, then apologized to the surrounding people, claiming that this kind of thing would never happen again. Finally, she came to Lin Xian's side and said in a tender voice, "Sir, I'm really sorry this time. The Heavenly Fragrance Market didn't treat you well. I hope you can forgive us." In order to make up for this misunderstanding, we will sell everything you buy at a 30% discount. The lady in pink said. Lin Xian lowered his voice and said, "Since you're so sincere, it's meaningless for me to pursue the matter. Do you sell 100-year-old spiritual fruits?" "Sir, this way, please." The pink woman's smile was like a flower. She swayed her hips and led Lin Xian into a stylish shop. "This is a 100-year-old flame fruit. It contains a powerful fire attribute. It's very suitable for martial artists who practice fire attribute martial arts. It costs 1,000 spirit stones. This is the frost fruit. It contains a domineering frost power." The pink woman introduced 7 or 8 kinds of spiritual fruits. Each of them was more than 100 years old and incomparably precious. "Which one does Sir fancy?" the pink woman asked with a smile. Lin Xian's eyes flashed. These spiritual fruits were all around 1,000 spirit stones. After a 30% discount, it would still be around 700 spirit stones. He didn't know how much his spirit wine could be sold for, but it shouldn't be any worse than these spiritual fruits. "I want these 3. Lin Xian stretched out his finger and said in a low voice. Lin Xian pointed to the flame fruit, frost fruit, and thunder fruit. These 3 fruits were all worth 1,000 spirit stones. Together, it would be 3,000 spirit stones. This was not a small number. "Can you buy spiritual liquid here?" Lin Xian suddenly asked. "Spiritual liquid?" The pink woman was stunned. Then she looked at Lin Xian with some surprise. "What kind of spiritual liquid would Sir like to sell? Please wait for a moment. I'll go get an appraiser." The pink woman brought Lin Xian to a luxurious room. Then she swayed her slender waist and left. Not long after, she brought back a white-haired old man. "This is our Heavenly Fragrance Market's appraiser, Master Yuan. Elder Yuan, this is the sir who wants to sell spiritual liquid," the pink woman said. Elder Yuan had a head full of white hair. The wrinkles on his face were like dried orange peels. However, his eyes were as bright as stars. From time to time, they would flash. Lin Xian smiled faintly. With a flip of his hand, a small white porcelain bottle appeared in his hand. He placed the white porcelain bottle on the table. Then he leaned back and leaned against the back of the chair. Seeing this, Elder Yuan didn't stand on ceremony. He grabbed the white porcelain bottle and carefully opened it. Suddenly, a fragrant smell wafted out. It made people feel refreshed. Elder Yuan's eyes lit up. He quickly sat down and examined it carefully. Even the pink woman looked at Lin Xian with some surprise. She was one of the managers of the Heavenly Fragrance Market. She was in charge of the entire herb area. Usually, she saw spiritual liquids. However, it was her first time seeing one that could make people feel refreshed just by smelling it, like Lin Xian. Chapter 17. 2 bottles of spirit liquid for 300-year-old spirit fruits. Moreover, he could establish a relationship with such a mysterious person. This kind of business was absolutely profitable. Of course, the woman in red smiled like a flower. She took out a purple gold card and said with a smile, "This is the Heavenly Fragrance Market's VIP card. In the future, you will be treated as a VIP in any area of the Heavenly Fragrance Market. Moreover, you will get a 10% discount on all purchases. If you want to auction, the handling fee will be reduced from 10% to 5%. It seems that he mistook me for an alchemist." Lin Xian took the purple gold card and nodded with satisfaction. In the Lingwu continent, there were all kinds of professions. Among them was an alchemist who specialized in extracting the effective ingredients of spirit herbs and making them into highly effective spirit herbs or spirit liquids. Alchemists were divided into 9 grades. The corresponding elixirs and spirit liquids were also divided into 9 grades. The spirit wine in Lin Xian's hand was a 2nd-grade spirit liquid. Lin Xian took the spirit fruits and quickly left the shop. Looking at Lin Xian's back, the woman in red's eyes flashed. "Elder Yuan, is this really a 2nd-grade spirit liquid?" Elder Yuan's orange, peel-like face was full of seriousness. "It is indeed a 2nd-grade spirit liquid, but I didn't sense the aura of an alchemist from that person." "You mean that person isn't an alchemist?" The woman in red frowned slightly. "Should we send someone to investigate him?" Elder Yuan shook his head. "No. Even if he isn't an alchemist, he must have an unusual relationship with one. If we anger him, I'm afraid it will only bring harm to the Heavenly Fragrance Market. You should know that alchemists are people that many forces fight over. Don't offend an alchemist. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." "Don't worry, Elder Yuan. I know what to do." The woman in red smiled. After leaving the Heavenly Fragrance Market, Lin Xian didn't go back directly. Instead, he went straight to the Western District's commercial street. The commercial street was far worse than the Heavenly Fragrance Market. There were no magnificent buildings, no guards to maintain order, and no beautiful maids to greet him with a smile. After getting 3 spirit fruits, Lin Xian was in a good mood. He walked briskly on the commercial street. From time to time, he would glance at the stalls by the roadside. Most of them were selling ordinary items. Some were even selling broken weapons and armor. Other than that, there were also some oddly shaped items. These people called them antiques. Lin Xian searched around, but didn't find anything good. Just as he was about to leave, Lord Alcohol suddenly spoke. "Xiao, Xuanzi, there's a brown stone in the stall on the right. You must get it." Lin Xian discreetly turned around to take a look, then asked in his mind, "What's so special about it? I told you you're young, but you didn't believe me." Lord Alcohol had a look of mockery. "Of course there's nothing wrong with this stone. The key is that there's a tree branch sealed inside. It's been there for at least 1,000 years. "Really?" Lin Xian was surprised. He realized that Lord Alcohol was like a god. First, he could make the middle-aged fatty speak the truth, and now he could see what was inside the stone. "How did you do it?" Lin Xian also wanted to learn, so he asked ingratiatingly, "This is a divine power. A divine power. Do you understand?" Lord Alcohol said proudly. Lin Xian curled his lips. He casually walked to the stall and picked up a few items to take a look. The stall owner was a youth about his age, but his face was sallow, and he was a little thin. "Sir, what have you taken a fancy to?" "Let me tell you, these items are heirlooms in my family. They're definitely antiques," the sallow-faced youth said with a smile of exultation. Lin Xian picked through the items for a long time before picking up the brown stone. Lord Alcohol let out a strange cry in Lin Xian's mind. Lin Xian felt a tiny black vortex flash past, but when he took a closer look, he realized that there was nothing. Done. Xiao Xuanzi, I've got that half of the tree branch. You can leave now. Lord Alcohol took the tree branch and 3 spirit fruits and focused on brewing wine. What's this? You're selling a crappy stone? Lin Xian asked with a suppressed voice. The sallow-faced youth's eyes darted around, but before he could say a word, Lin Xian heard an extremely arrogant voice behind him. I'll buy this stone. Clang! A bag of spirit stones landed on the stall. Here are 20 spirit stones. Take them, and the stone is mine. The voice sounded like it was giving a command. Lin Xian turned his head and saw a few youths standing behind him. They had arrogant looks on their faces, as though they thought nothing of anyone. I've given you the money, and the stone is mine. Put down the stone, and you can leave. One of the youths said coldly to Lin Xian. Lin Xian had no need to fight over the stone with the item in his hands. However, the youth's tone made him unhappy. Furthermore, they were all disciples of the Mystic Heaven sect. 2 of them were from the Divine Might group. One of them was a girl dressed in azure-colored clothes. She had a pretty face, but she had an arrogant look on her face. The Divine Might group again. Lin Xian sneered inwardly as he said indifferently, I'll pay 30 spirit stones. How dare you compete with me? Do you know that we are disciples of the Mystic Heaven sect? The youth said arrogantly, since ancient times, the highest bidder has won. You are just an outer sect disciple. You don't have the right to be arrogant. Lin Xian said disdainfully. These people were mostly at the 4th stage of the meridian condensation realm. They could be considered above average in the outer sect. However, these people spoke as though they were peerless experts and did not place anyone in their eyes. All right, 30 spirit stones. It's yours. The youth sneered. I won't spend a single cent. I can still make you obediently give it to me. Finished speaking, he touched the long sword at his waist. The threat was very obvious. Such a good stone. Of course, I have to cut it open on the spot. Lin Xian said indifferently. When the youths heard this, their faces changed. They didn't know what to do. They could only stare fiercely at Lin Xian. Humph! Wait for Brother Tianjie to come back and teach him a lesson, the girl suddenly said. Sure enough, not long after, another youth arrived. This was a youth with thick eyebrows and big eyes. His aura was very tyrannical. His eyes were as sharp as lightning, and his momentum was astonishing. 5th stage of the meridian condensation realm. Lin Xian was secretly shocked. This youth was already an expert in the outer sect. Why did these people also want the stone? Did they also know that there was something inside? After the youth called Tianjie learned of this matter, he directly asked stall owner, Who are you going to sell it to? I'm not selling it. No matter how stupid the yellow-faced stall owner was, he knew that this brown stone was a treasure. How could he sell it for 20 spirit stones? 50 spirit stones. I'll take the stone. Otherwise, you are going against the Mystic Heaven sect's godly might group. Tianjie said sternly, What? You are a member of the godly might group. The yellow-faced stall owner's face suddenly turned ugly. Tianjie saw the yellow-faced stall owner's expression change and smile proudly. Then he reached out his hand and arrogantly grabbed the stone in Lin Xian's hand. Chapter 18. From Tianjie's point of view, Lin Xian's aura was not strong, which was why he dared to be so arrogant. That arm glowed with a yellow light and grabbed at Lin Xian. Humph! You want to pretend to be a master just by wearing a black robe? Senior Tianjie, is a rank 5 meridian condensing stage 5. The group of youths sneered. You dare to steal our things. You are looking for death. The yellow-faced stall owner was so scared that his face turned pale. He curled up to the side and didn't dare to look at the bloody scene. Lin Xian frowned slightly. He grabbed the brown stone in his hand and met the yellow fist head-on. Tianjie saw that Lin Xian used the brown stone to block his attack. He was annoyed, but he didn't dare to attack directly. He was afraid of damaging the brown stone. His fist turned into a claw and grabbed at Lin Xian's shoulder. Lin Xian quickly moved his arm and used the stone to block the attack. He said slowly, I bid 60 spirit stones. Damn, don't be so arrogant. If you delay our business, it will be hard for you to die, even if you want to. Tianjie was depressed. He obviously had powerful strength, but he couldn't use it. This kind of feeling was indescribably sullen. I will count to 3. If you don't increase the price, I will crush this stone on the spot. Lin Xian sneered. 1. The martial artists on the business street saw people fighting. They thought that a treasure had appeared and surrounded them. Damn, who is so lucky to find something good? Hey, you have to be alive to get the good stuff. I can't believe I met a rank 5 spiritual knight. 2. Lin Xian shouted, Don't blame me if an expert is attracted. Tianjie's palm moved continuously. His moves were exquisite, but Lin Xian used the brown stone to block his attack path. I bid 70. Tianjie gritted his teeth and said. He thought it through. As long as he got the stone, the first thing he would do was to tear this black-robed man apart. What? 70? Did I hear wrong? The surrounding people shouted. A treasure is only 70 spirit stones. I bid 80. Can I buy it? Someone asked. The highest bidder wins. Lin Xian laughed. I'll pay 100. Damn it. All of you get lost. Tianjie was furious. His body's spiritual power gushed out, and a yellow stream of air jumped like flames. Some people still wanted to bid, but they were suppressed by Tianjie's aura. Humph! We're from the Black Heaven Sect's Godly Might group. We won't forgive anyone who dares to cause trouble. The young disciples shouted coldly. Many people gave up on fighting for the treasures. Although the treasures were good, their lives were more precious. Yo, what a big tone. I'll bid 150 spirit stones. A mocking voice rang out. Many people turned their heads to see who dared to challenge the people from the Black Sky sect. Tianjie also stopped attacking and looked coldly at the person who made the bid. Lin Xian took a quick glance and realized that he actually knew the person who had made the bid. Luo Yi. Tianjie gritted his teeth and said, Your battle group also wants to intervene. Originally, I didn't want to interfere, but I just can't stand your divine might group. Luo Yi said with a grin, 200 spirit stones. Tianjie did not continue to argue with Luo Yi. The two of them were equal in strength and status. If they insisted on fighting, the outcome would not be decided in a short time. 220 spirit stones. Luo Yi crossed his arms and looked very satisfied. Tianjie did not bid anymore. Instead, he suddenly launched an attack. His fist was like a fierce tiger, and even the air was trembling. It was too sudden. Luo Yi and the others did not expect it, so they did not have time to help. They could only hope that the black-robed man could dodge it. Like a fierce tiger coming down the mountain, the yellow fist was wrapped in spiritual power. It let out a low tiger roar and went straight for Lin Xian's face. It's the intermediate yellow rank martial art, Tiger Roaring Fist. This black-robed man is dead for sure. Senior brother Tianjie is really powerful. I'm afraid no one in the same rank can take this punch, right? Lin Xian's left hand was like a sword. Green spiritual power gushed out and formed a sword light. He used his finger as a sword and pointed it out. It was like a shooting star. Chi. This was the shooting star. However, Lin Xian only used his finger to display it. The power was not weak at all. The sword light swayed and flew out like a startled swan. It instantly broke Tianjie's howling tiger fist. Pooh! Tianjie felt pain in his arm and staggered back. His eyes were full of fear. The disciples who followed him still had a smile on their faces, but their muscles were as stiff as stone. How is this possible? Those youths almost bit off their tongues. That was senior brother Tianjie, the elite of the Xinwei group. He was a fifth-rank spiritual knight. Luo Yi's pupils shrank. He thought carefully, and realized that if it was him, he would not be able to dodge that sword. Who is this black-robed man? His heart was full of fear. A sneak attack? Lin Xian's voice was cold. I changed my mind. If you don't take out 500 spirit stones, you can forget about getting this stone. At this moment, Tianjie was still in a state of shock. The sword strike just now had shattered his confidence. He was now determined that Lin Xian was the mysterious expert. He had never seen anyone with a sword as fast as him. Senior, please calm down. I have eyes but failed to see and offended you. Tianjie said in a panic, Here are 500 spirit tickets. You can exchange them for spirit stones at the Myriad Treasure Building in the city. I hope that Senior can... Tianjie's performance was completely different from before. There was no other way. This was a world where strength was respected. Only those with strength could make others submit. Take it? Lin Xian took the spirit tickets and said in a deep voice, I'll let this matter go. If there's a next time, I'll kill without mercy. He threw the brown stone to Tianjie. Since the spirit branch in the stone had been taken out by Lord Alcohol, it was useless to him. Senior, you are right, Tianjie said respectfully. After he got the stone, he immediately left with a group of disciples. It seemed like he was really frightened. Lin Xian took out a spirit ticket and gave it to the stall owner. He asked, Where did you get that stone? The yellow-faced stall owner trembled as he took the spirit ticket and whispered, Senior, that stone was picked up in the periphery of Taihang Mountain. That day, there was a hurricane in the forest, and many things were blown over. This brown stone was one of them. Hurricane? Lin Xian immediately thought of the gigantic bird that day. From the looks of it, this stone was originally in the depths of the forest. It was only accidentally brought out by the bird. Are there many of these stones? Lin Xian asked again. I only picked up one. The rest fell into the deep pit. I didn't dare pick them up. The stall owner said carefully, It's a demonic pit. Any living creature that approaches it will lose themselves and die, turning into a pile of bones. Senior, it's best you don't go. Don't set up your stall for the time being. Be careful of those people causing trouble for you, Lin Xian reminded him before leaving without looking back. He had also heard of the demonic pit. It was a forbidden area in the Taihang Mountains. He had only seen people enter, but no one came out alive. To think that it's in such a dangerous place, Lin Xian originally wanted to collect more brownstones, but he could only give up. He came to a deserted place and quickly took off his black robe, returning to his original appearance. Let's return to the sect first. When Lord Alcohol is done brewing the spirit wine, I can begin cultivating the lightning eclipse sword art. Lin Xian was filled with anticipation. Tianjie and company took the brownstone to an inn. They surrounded a table and curiously looked at the stone on the table. Senior brother, is this really a stone from the depths of the Taihang Mountains? There's nothing special about it. A disciple said, I don't know either. However, this was requested by an inner sect senior brother. We outer sect disciples can only collect it, Tianjie said in a deep voice. Senior brother once instructed us not to damage the stone. It seems like there's something special inside, but I'm not sure what it is exactly. Chapter 19. Black Heaven Sect, Mission Hall, after registering his information. Chen Dazheng left happily with the treasured artifact that Lin Xian had repaired. Repairing the human rank treasured artifact was an order issued by the elder. No one had been able to repair it for 3 months. Now that Lin Xian had repaired it, he could benefit from it as well. Chen Dazheng hummed a tune and quickly walked towards the back of the mountain. An hour later, he arrived in front of a quiet courtyard and cupped his hands at the 2 disciples guarding the door. Senior brothers, I'm Chen Dazheng from the Mission Hall. I'm here to seek an audience with Elder Fong. Please inform him. The disciple guarding the door said, Elder Fong is in seclusion. If there's anything, leave it to us. This is Elder Fong's human rank treasured artifact. It has been repaired. Senior brother, please accept it on my behalf. Chen Dazheng was somewhat disappointed that he couldn't see Elder Fong. Don't worry, leave it to me, said the disciple. The disciple said, wait a moment, there's a weapon here. Take it back and send out the mission. There's more? Chen Dazheng's eyes lit up. He felt somewhat excited in his heart. If he could repair both of Elder Fong's treasures, then he would definitely be able to gain Elder Fong's favor. Although the one who repaired the treasures was Lin Xian, Chen Dazheng's skill was also very great. All right, senior brother, don't worry. I'll go back and issue the mission now. Chen Dazheng took the treasured saber and left happily. Lin Xian finally returned to the Black Heaven Sect after rushing all the way. There was still no news from Lord Alcohol, so he went to the mission hall to take a look. Junior brother Lin, over here. As soon as Lin Xian entered the mission hall, he heard someone call his name. He looked in the direction of the voice and realized that it was Chen Dazheng. Senior brother Chen, is there a new mission? Lin Xian asked in delight. Junior brother Lin, this is a treasured saber. It's also a mission issued by the elder. The price is the same as last time. How about it? Do you want to take it? Lin Xian wasn't lacking in spirit stones, but he was lacking in contribution points. Now that he heard that there was a mission, of course he would accept it. I've accepted the mission. Thank you, senior apprentice brother Chen. Lin Xian accepted the mission and gave Chen Dazheng 30 spirit stones. Junior brother is so generous. Chen Dazheng's smile reached his ears. He quickly put away the spirit stones and said with a smile, you just have to focus on repairing it. I'll leave the task of repairing weapons for you. Lin Xian smiled and said goodbye to Chen Dazheng. Then he took his saber and walked back to his house. After spending 2 hours to repair the treasured saber, Lin Xian formed a seal with both hands and entered a state of cultivation. Under the urging of the longevity secret art, the spirit energy in his body quickly circulated according to a specific route. Lin Xian's body was surrounded by a green light like a ball of fire. After a night of meditation, Lin Xian did not feel tired at all. On the contrary, he felt refreshed and his body was filled with energy. Outside the window, the sun had just risen and it was bright red. Lord Alcohol had also finished brewing the spirit wine, so his body was fine for the time being. He laughed out loud. Xiao Xuanzi, well done. I won't have to worry about running out of wine for the next few months. Next, it's time to teach you the thunderous sword art. Pack up and let's set off. Where are we going? Lin Xian looked excited. Taihang Mountains. The length of your cultivation time will depend on your perceptivity, said Lord Alcohol. Let's go. Lin Xian grabbed the repaired saber and went to the mission hall to submit the mission. Then he rushed to the mountain entrance. Lin Xian constantly shuttled through the forest and finally found a relatively clean cave as his temporary residence. Then he began cultivating. The thunderous sword art was not only fast but also violent. In terms of speed, Lin Xian didn't have much of a problem. The main problem was his control of strength. Strength was one of the pursuits of warriors. The strength of a pulse condensation realm warrior consisted of two aspects. One was the strength of the body's muscles, and the other was the strength produced by the spirit energy in the body. It was already not bad for a typical warrior to be able to use half of the strength in their body. It could be said that the efficiency of using strength was extremely low. A better warrior would be able to use 70% of the strength in their body. And once a warrior could accurately control the strength in their body and use 10% of the strength, their strength would definitely increase greatly. What Lin Xian needed to do now was precisely control the strength in every part of his body. Xiao, Xuanzi, I'll now assign the first training content for you, said Lord Alcohol. First, find a mountain to practice engraving words. Engraving words? Aren't I here to cultivate? Why do I have to engrave words? Lin Xian was puzzled. Your control of spirit energy is trash. You can't effectively use the spirit energy in your body. The first content is to allow you to gain basic control of your spirit energy, said Lord Alcohol. Open your 10 fingers and engrave a row of words on each finger. You have to engrave them together. Furthermore, I want every word to be of the same depth. If you make a mistake, you have to start over. Today, engrave 20 words. You can only sleep after meeting my requirements. Lord Alcohol had a solemn expression. Don't worry. Lin Xian found a smooth mountain rock and circulated the spirit energy in his body. His 10 fingers were enveloped by an azure light. He calmed himself down and moved his fingers. Whenever the spirit energy touched the mountain rock, it would leave a dent. Lin Xian originally thought that it would be simple, but he was wrong. When his 10 fingers touched the mountain rock for the first time, the depth of the dent was different. The right hand he used was clearly deeper than his left hand. Furthermore, there was a difference between each finger. Only now did Lin Xian understand that it wasn't an easy task. He had to evenly inject his spirit energy into his fingers before exerting it evenly. Just like that, Lin Xian began engraving again. And again, Mystic Heaven Sect Back Mountain, in a quiet courtyard, an old man with fluttering white hair pushed open the door and walked out. Elder Fong, this is your human rank treasure. It has been repaired. A green-robed disciple handed over a long wooden box. Oh, it's been repaired? Elder Fong was somewhat surprised. He didn't have much hope back then, and had just casually placed it in the mission hall. He opened the box and took out a long sword. He waved it twice in the air, and a sword beam soared into the sky, tearing through the void. Yes, it seems to be even more powerful than before. Elder Fong held the long sword in his hand and looked at it carefully. Elder Fong's hand suddenly trembled. This is Sword Pool Manor's technique. Who sent it? Elder Fong asked. Mission Hall's Chun Dajing, the green-robed disciple answered respectfully. Whoosh. Elder Fong transformed into a beam of light and disappeared from the courtyard. Mission Hall, Registration Office. Chun Dajing lowered his head to check the mission information. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew over and scattered the books on his desk. He cursed under his breath and raised his head. He wanted to press down on the papers with his hand to prevent them from being blown away by the wind. However, what he saw gave him a fright. His heart almost jumped out of his chest. A figure stood silently in front of him, like a ghost. Fong! Elder Fong! Chun Dajing called out excitedly after seeing the person's face clearly. Let me ask you, who repaired that human rank treasure? Elder Fong asked. An outer sect disciple called Lin Xian. Chun Dajing answered quickly. Surnamed Lin. Elder Fong whispered. Tell him to come and see me. Yes, Chun Dajing said respectfully. Chapter 20. Chun Dajing was puzzled as he did not know why Elder Fong would come personally. Could there be a problem with the artifact? Chen Dajing thought. That shouldn't be the case. If there really was a problem, it wouldn't be this tone. He quickly ran towards the outer disciples' dormitory. It seemed that only by finding Lin Xian would he be able to find out what happened. However, what gave him a headache was that Lin Xian wasn't even in the room. Chen Dajing asked the surrounding disciples, but no one knew where Lin Xian went. Helpless, he could only brace himself and report to Elder Fong. After Elder Fong heard, he stroked his beard. When he comes back, tell him to come and see me immediately. Yes, Chen Dajing respectfully replied. After Elder Fong left, Chen Dajing suddenly slapped his forehead. I forgot that I still have Lin Xian's recently repaired treasured saber. Forget it. I'll wait for Lin Xian to come back before I send it over. He did not dare to look for Elder Fong now. He could only hope that Lin Xian would come back soon. At the same time, a storm was about to arrive in the outer sect of the Black Sky sect. The Shun Wei group's disciples mobilized all their forces to search for the people that Zhang Bin came in contact with before he died. In the end, a square-faced disciple said a shocking news. He was injured in a fight with others. Zhang Bin saw his signal and went to save him. After that, Zhang Bin and the others followed that person to the depths of the forest and died in the forest. In the end, the Shun Wei group's disciples drew out Lin Xian's appearance. A search for Lin Xian was carried out in the outer sect. After searching everywhere, they finally found out about Lin Xian's background. A sword slave who just joined the outer sect? A youth with a scar on his face heard this and became furious. You think he can kill a rank 4 spiritual knight and 2 rank 3 spiritual knights? This youth was one of the people in charge of the outer sect of the Xinwei group. His name was Yan Kong, and his cultivation had reached rank 6 of the Meridian's condensing stage. When he heard the news about Lin Xian, he couldn't help but become furious. Brother Kong, that square-faced disciple trembled as he said, when I was fighting with that Lin Xian, I discovered that even though he was a rank 3 spiritual knight, his strength far exceeded that of a rank 3 spiritual knight. Brother Kong, this is the only clue we have now. Regardless of whether it is true or not, let's capture him first. Otherwise, when Zhang Rui returns, we won't be able to explain ourselves. The disciple beside Yan Kong said, Let's go and take a look. Yan Kong waved his hand and led the group towards Lin Xian's residence. In the residential area of the outer sect disciples, a group of Xinwei group's disciples suddenly appeared. They quickly surrounded a small house, and one of the disciples kicked the door of the house down. The surrounding disciples came out one after another, looking at the group of aggressive Xinwei group's disciples. They were all at a loss. Brother Kong, that brat is not here. Someone went in to investigate, then came out and said, Not here? Did he run away? Yan Kong frowned. Quickly send people to search the vicinity of the sect. Send a group of people to wait here. I don't believe that he can run to the sky. With a command, the Shun Wei group's outer sect disciples quickly took action. The surrounding disciples also gradually understood their actions. Lin Xian's name was recognized by everyone for the first time, but when they found out that Lin Xian was just a little disciple who had just joined the outer sect and had no background or backing, they suddenly felt dizzy. Indeed, the ignorant were fearless. A little disciple actually dared to provoke a colossus like the divine Might group. When Tang Yu heard this news, she quickly ran to find Lin Xian. She didn't expect Lin Xian to create such a big mess. Not only did he find trouble with the Xinwei group, he even killed someone. She hurriedly ran to Lin Xian's residence, afraid that Lin Xian had already been taken away by the Xinwei group. But luckily, other than seeing a house full of Xinwei group's disciples, she didn't see Lin Xian's shadow. Little bastard, you still know how to run away. Humph. Tang, you kept scolding Lin Xian in her heart. After looking around, And not finding Lin Xian, she stomped her feet angrily and walked away in a huff. A group of onlooking disciples discussed, I heard that Lin Xian was Tang Yu's sword slave in the past. That's right. Didn't Tang Yu just leave? Could this be secretly arranged by the battle group? In just half a day, this murder case turned into a war between the Xinwei group and the battle group. The entire outer sect was spreading the news. Very quickly, the same news also appeared in the inner sect. However, the battle group's upper echelons personally came out to clarify that this matter had nothing to do with the battle group. Only then did the lie be suppressed. The Xinwei group waited for an entire day, but didn't see Lin Xian's shadow. Therefore, they were even more certain that Lin Xian was the murderer and had escaped. And the person in question, Lin Xian, was currently standing in front of a huge rock carving words. After a few days of training, he was already able to control the spirit energy in his body. His 10 fingers moved as rows of words of the same depth appeared on the rock. Very good. It's faster than I expected, Lord Alcohol grunted. Then, can I practice my swordsmanship now? Lin Xian said excitedly, I said you were young, but you didn't believe me. This is only the first step, Lord Alcohol lectured. The second step is to carve words on the leaves, but you can't pierce them. Lin Xian knew that the requirements for controlling his strength were even stricter, but he wasn't afraid. Picking up a leaf from the ground, Lin Xian circulated his spirit energy and was about to begin. Hey, what are you doing? Lord Alcohol suddenly roared. Lin Xian wore a blank look. You said to carve words. Lord Alcohol wore a helpless look as he kicked the tree behind him. Oh, Lin Xian turned around and kicked the tree trunk. Although he didn't use any strength, the tree still shook 3 times. The leaves on the tree fluttered in the wind and scattered in the air. You can begin now, Lord Alcohol said. Lin Xian looked at the leaves that filled the sky as his face fell. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. In the forest, a figure flew up and brandished the black iron sword in his hand at lightning speed. Every strike carved the word martial on the fluttering leaves. The sword didn't pierce the leaves when it came into contact with them. The precision of the strike was astounding. This figure was none other than Lin Xian. After half a month of training, he could already accurately carve words on leaves without piercing them. Uncle Drunkard, I've completed this part of the training. What's next? Lin Xian asked with a grin. Lord Alcohol nodded in satisfaction. You can begin practicing your swordsmanship. Practice the first step first. The first step of the lightning eclipse sword art had a total of 13 strikes. Each strike was as unstoppable as a bolt of lightning. Furthermore, the lightning eclipse sword art had a unique way of exerting strength. It only used 70% of its strength and retained the remaining 30% to complement the next attack. It was like lightning in the clouds, constantly accumulating strength. Practice in the water, and make good use of the resistance in the water. It will be of great help to your swordsmanship, Lord Alcohol suggested. The resistance in the water was great, and it tested one's control of strength. Lin Xian didn't hesitate. He remembered that there was a waterfall not far ahead. After tidying up his things, Lin Xian headed to the waterfall to practice his swordsmanship. Chapter 21. Early morning. In the forest, the morning sun shone through the layers of leaves and illuminated the forest. A young man in ragged clothes walked through the forest. His face was dirty, but his eyes were as bright as the stars. It's been a month, and I've finally mastered it. The young man's eyes were filled with excitement. It's time to return to the sect. This young man was Lin Xian, who had come out to train. After a month of brutal training, he had finally mastered the first stage of the thunderclap sword art. It could be said that his strength now had a qualitative leap compared to a month ago. Lin Xian moved and flew forward. Not long after, the majestic mountain gate of the Black Heaven sect appeared in front of him. Go back, take a shower, change into a clean set of clothes, and then have a big meal. Lin Xian had been going crazy for the past month. Now that he was going back, he had to relax. Stop. This is the Black Heaven sect. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. The disciple guarding the mountain gate shouted. Lin Xian looked at his clothes. Indeed, he couldn't tell that it was the sect uniform. He could only take out his identity token to prove his identity. Senior brother, I'm an outer sect disciple. I'm just cultivating outside. The disciple saw Lin Xian's identity token and let him pass. However, he looked at Lin Xian with a strange gaze. He had been a disciple guarding the mountain for a while, but he had never seen anyone cultivate to such an extent. Along the way, Lin Xian attracted curious gazes wherever he passed. Lin Xian's face was slightly red, but with a thick layer of dust covering his face, it couldn't be seen. However, when he returned to his residence, he felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. There seemed to be more divine might group disciples patrolling nearby, and there seemed to be people in his house. Lin Xian didn't know that he had been exposed, but looking at the scene, he could guess a thing or two. At this time, running away was unrealistic. He might as well be open about it. After all, the other party didn't see him with their own eyes. Who allowed you to come in? Lin Xian saw that his door was kicked open, and his face darkened. F***CK, who are you? You dare to meddle in the affairs of our Xinwei group? The disciples in the house clamored. Where did this beggar come from? Lin Xian frowned. What's wrong with the Xinwei group? This is my house. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to scram. He knew that the conflict between him and the Xinwei group could not be resolved, so he did not have any misgivings. When the surrounding disciples heard the commotion, they immediately gathered around. Why is there someone provoking the divine might group again? There have been a lot of hotheads recently. No, he just said that it was his house. He's Lin Xian. Lin Xian. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at this legendary figure. You're Lin Xian. F***CK, I've been waiting for you for a month, and I've finally caught you. Brothers, charge. The Xinwei group's disciples had been waiting for nearly a month and were already filled with anger. Now that they saw Lin Xian, they even had the urge to eat him up. Whoosh, whoosh. For 4th level condensing meridian, disciples rushed out and surrounded Lin Xian. Charge. Powerful spiritual energy exploded from the 4 people's bodies, and they were about to attack. Let's see who dares. Lin Xian roared. This roar was filled with spiritual energy. That voice was like a clap of thunder, exploding beside the crowd. The 4 people were shocked by Lin Xian's imposing manner. Lin Xian's black hair danced in the wind as he stood proudly. His body faintly emitted a shocking power. You're at death's door, and you still want to struggle. Our people will be here soon. You dare to oppose our Xinwei group? Just wait for your death. These Xinwei group's disciples were accustomed to tyrannizing others. Now that there was someone like Lin Xian who dared to challenge them, they naturally hated him. Sure enough, not long after, many Xinwei group's disciples rushed over and quickly surrounded the place. What's the point of wasting words with him? Just take him down, an irascible person roared. Seeing that the surrounding people were ready to make a move, Lin Xian suddenly took out a few pieces of paper from his bosom and held them up high. Talisman paper, quickly retreat. Someone saw Lin Xian take out a piece of paper and immediately exclaimed. The entire crowd retreated half a meter, and no one dared to get too close. When the crowd saw that Lin Xian's hand was not a talisman paper, the Xinwei group's disciples were immediately enraged. Talisman paper your grandpa? Humph! Lin Xian sneered. and the imposing manner on his body became even stronger. Although this is not a talisman paper, its power is stronger than a talisman paper. What is that? A high-grade talisman paper? Forbidden runes? Everyone was curious. A bunch of idiots. Lin Xian cursed in his heart and loudly said, "This is the sect's rule? Have your brains been kicked by a donkey? You dare to fight in the sect?" Lin Xian grabbed the book that recorded the sect's rules and said, "The 8th rule of the sect is that if you fight in the sect without any reason, the lightest punishment will be 30 lashes with a spirit whip, and the heaviest punishment will be expulsion from the sect." Lashing with a spirit whip was not an ordinary punishment and was carried out by the outer sect's law enforcement team. These people's cultivation was at the 4th level of the meridian's condensation stage, and they used special spirit whips. After being lashed 30 times, even if you didn't die, you would be crippled. Hearing Lin Xian's reprimand, the Shunwei group's disciples hesitated. Although they were usually arrogant, they would never dare to openly violate the sect's rules. For a moment, the scene became awkward. The Shunwei group's disciples did not know whether to retreat or fight, so they could only stand and surround Lin Xian to prevent him from escaping. Lin Xian saw that the crowd was intimidated and secretly let out a sigh of relief. He walked into the hut, sat at the table, poured a cup of water, and slowly drank. He was waiting for the leader of the Shunwei group to come. He had no one to rely on now, so he could only use the sect's rules to scare these people. As long as he didn't get assassinated, these people shouldn't be able to do anything to him, for the time being. Sure enough, not long after, Yan Kong brought a group of disciples here. After knowing what had happened, his cold gaze was directed at Lin Xian. Lin Xian knew that the main character had arrived. He slowly walked out, vigilantly looking at Yan Kong. "You are Lin Xian?" Yan Kong's eyes were cold. "That's right," Lin Xian said in a low voice. "I heard that you are quite familiar with the sect's rules. Then do you know what the consequences of killing a fellow disciple are?" Yan Kong suddenly said harshly, "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Lin Xian was very calm. "You better hurry up and leave with your people. Let me introduce you. This is Captain Hua of the Outer Sect's law enforcement team." Yan Kong's lips curled into an evil smile. Lin Xian had already noticed that there were a few people dressed in black beside Yan Kong. These people had 2 small golden swords embroidered on their chests. He didn't expect them to be from the Outer Sect's law enforcement team. The person called Captain Hua walked forward and said in a low voice, "Lin Xian, we suspect that you killed a fellow disciple. Come with us." "Where's the evidence? Who saw it?" Lin Xian didn't expect the law enforcement team to side with the Shunwei group. He had already prepared for the worst. "You don't have to be nervous. This is just an investigation. If you didn't kill anyone, we will let you go." Captain Hua looked very fair. "Men, take him away." Captain Hua said coldly, "Wait without evidence. Who dares to arrest him?" A delicate voice shouted. Following that, a beautiful figure floated in. "Tang Yu." Captain Hua frowned. He glanced at Yan Kong and found that the other party was also frowning. "Junior Tang Yu, he killed a fellow disciple. Don't cause trouble here." Yan Kong said. He wasn't afraid of Tang Yu, but Tang Yu's brother was an expert in the top 10 of the inner sect. This was what he was really afraid of. "Humph! Without evidence, you can't arrest him." Tang Yu stood beside Lin Xian and said angrily. Chapter 22. Mission Hall, Registration Office. Chun Dajing lowered his head to check the mission information. Suddenly, someone ran over and shouted, "That guy called Lin Xian is back. He is now confronting the Divine Might group." This shout immediately alerted all the disciples in the mission hall. They all put down the missions in their hands and ran out. Although they had never seen Lin Xian, they had heard of Lin Xian's fame for almost a month. An outer sect disciple without any background actually dared to kill a member of the divine might group. Moreover, the one who died was the inner sect expert Zhang Qian's younger brother. This was definitely the hottest news in recent times. Chen Dajing had long heard of this matter. However, he could only be anxious. Now that he heard that Lin Xian was back, he became even more anxious. After thinking for a long time, he could only ask Elder Fong for help. He picked up the repaired treasured saber and hurriedly ran to the back of the mountain. Passing through layers of halls, Chen Dajing came to a quiet courtyard. He bowed to the disciple on guard and said, "Senior brother, I have an urgent matter to ask Elder Fong." "Oh, it's you?" Seeing that it was Chen Dajing, the disciple on guard smiled. "Wait here, I'll inform him." Chen Dajing anxiously waited outside. Now, time was life. If he was late for even a second, Lin Xian could be taken away by the Divine Might Group. He did not think that Lin Xian could defeat the Divine Might Group. "All right, come with me." Just as Chen Dajing felt like a year, the disciple on guard led him in. Disciple Chen Dajing paid his respects to Elder Fong. Chen Dajing obediently paid his respects. "What's the matter?" Elder Fong lightly asked. Chen Dajing was anxious. In front of Elder Fong, he could only slowly say, "This is Elder's treasured saber. It has already been repaired by Lin Xian." "Oh, it's Lin Xian again?" Elder Fong stroked his beard. "Has he returned?" "Elder, Lin Xian has returned. However, he is currently surrounded by the Divine Might Group. The Divine Might Group insisted that Lin Xian killed their people. Now they want to take away Lin Xian." "Nonsense." Elder Fong panicked when he heard that. "Lead the way." He grabbed Chen Dajing and used his movement technique, leaving behind a string of afterimages in the air. In the outer sect dormitory area, Tang Yu stood beside Lin Xian with her hands on her hips, glaring angrily at the members of the Divine Might Group and enforcers. "Whoever dares to take him away will have to go through me first." Lin Xian never thought that this little girl would be so protective of him. He felt a warm feeling in his heart. He said in a low voice, "Thank you very much this time." "Humph." Tang Yu rolled her eyes at him. "Didn't we agree that I'll take care of you after we enter the family? Don't worry." "Then I'm sorry," Captain Hua said coldly. He strode over in large strides, his body glowing with brilliance. A large hand stretched out, aiming straight for Lin Xian. Tang Yu's small face turned slightly cold. Just as she was about to make a move, she was pulled behind someone. Lin Xian pulled her behind him with one hand, then quickly pulled out his black iron sword. The black iron sword turned into a bolt of lightning, instantly thrusting out. Lin Xian's first move was the thunderous sword art. The sword flashed like a bolt of lightning, thrusting towards the large hand. Clang, clang! The two collided, producing the sound of metal clashing. Lin Xian thrust it out 3 times, thrusting towards 3 different positions. However, each time he was blocked by the spirit energy on the palm. However, the palm also stopped because of these 3 thrusts. This is the 6th level of the meridian condensing stage. Such strong spirit energy. Lin Xian could feel the strength of the opponent's spirit energy and couldn't help but sigh. When this scene fell into the eyes of the crowd, it immediately caused a commotion. Am I seeing things? He actually blocked Captain Hua's attack. A 4th level meridian condensing stage can actually fight against a 6th level meridian condensing stage. I'm not dreaming, right? That sword just now was so fast. Who is this guy? No matter who he is, after provoking the Godly Might Group and the law enforcement team, he's definitely dead. Captain Hua's face was terrifyingly dark. Just now, he had used 30% of his strength, but he didn't expect that Lin Xian would block it. Moreover, So many people had seen it. In this outer sect where news spread everywhere, the more it spread, the more ridiculous it became. Soon, everyone would know that Lin Xian had blocked his attack. Compared to his status, this was an absolute disgrace. You dare to resist arrest. Men, take him. Captain Hua shouted. Lin Xian pushed Tang Yu to the side and shouted, "Hurry up and leave." Then he clenched his long sword, ready to break out of the encirclement at any time. The disciples of the godly might group sneered at Lin Xian. They knew that Lin Xian wouldn't be able to escape, even if he had wings. Ha ha! Provoking the godly might group again. You can repent for the rest of your life. At this critical moment, a light flashed from the distance and arrived above the crowd in the blink of an eye. "Wanna rebel? Everyone stop." The figure landed on the ground. His voice was like the sound of a bell, quickly spreading in all directions. Only then did everyone see the appearance of the person. A white-haired old man was standing in the middle of the crowd carrying a pale disciple. "It's actually the elder." Everyone was shocked. They all bowed and greeted Elder Fong. The disciples who were fighting stopped one after another and stood aside obediently. "Gathering people to cause trouble in the sect. You guys are very capable. Why don't I send all of you out to kill the enemy?" Elder Fong coldly shouted. Everyone shrunk their necks in fear. The outside world was not peaceful. Some places were often invaded by demon beasts. Humans and demon beasts were often at war. If they were sent to the front line, it would be difficult to come back alive. Elder, Lin Xian is suspected of killing a fellow disciple. Captain Hua looked very fair. "Where's the evidence?" Elder Fong interrupted his words. "Hua Yongping, as the leader of the outer sect law enforcement team, you should know your responsibility, right?" "Yes," Hua Yongping said, "but, all right, everyone disperse. We'll arrest him when we have evidence," Elder Fong ordered. Hua Yongping's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He really wanted to catch this kid who embarrassed him, but now he could only give up. Thinking about it, this was the first time the law enforcement team had suffered a loss. This feeling made Hua Yongping's heart go crazy. Hua Yongping led the law enforcement team away. The rest of the people also dispersed. They knew that with Elder Fong here, Lin Xian was safe. However, the people of Shunwei Group glared at Lin Xian with an unfriendly expression before leaving resentfully. Just like that, a large-scale operation to capture people came to an end. "What's going on? Didn't you say that this kid has no background?" Hua Yongping angrily asked when they were far away. "Why did Elder Fong come?" Yan Kong's face was gloomy. He said in a deep voice, "During the investigation, we didn't find any relationship between him and Elder Fong. But so what? Don't forget that we also have an elder behind us. Moreover, he's an inner sect elder. There are many ways to deal with him. Once he's out of the sect, we can directly kill him. What if he doesn't leave the sect? The sect rules state that we can't kill, but it didn't say that we can't exchange pointers. We can exchange pointers in the name of array pointers, cutting off all his missions and making his life in the sect a living hell is easy for us. All right, the rest is up to your Shinwei group. I'll take my leave first." Hua Yongping led the law enforcement team away. Yan Kong ordered the members of the Shunwei group to get ready. He wanted to thoroughly toy with Lin Xian. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.